Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
We've been socialized in our society to not talk about race, religion, politics, right? Don't touch them. It's like the third rail.
Well, today we're going to touch that third rail, or at least talk about ways to touch it and survive. Because when it comes to these topics, and race in particular, admit it, it does play a role in the workplace.
I've definitely have seen some colleagues shy away from having real conversations about race.
Our guide to having these conversations that, and let's be honest about it, probably make some people really uncomfortable is Kira Hudson Banks.
I am an assistant professor of psychology at St. Louis University, and I also do diversity, inclusion, and racial equity consulting personally and through my firm, The Mouse and the Elephant.
Banks says stop ignoring race at work. It shouldn't be taboo. In fact, you should address it head on. And yes, that means more than just taking the required 1-hour diversity training session. She wrote about the subject in an article for the Harvard Business Review. So I asked her, as an academic who studies discrimination and its impacts on mental health, how does she talk about race with her colleagues?
For me, I'm pretty open talking about race. I'm pretty open talking about race with my children, with my colleagues, with my students. To me, it's not inherently a controversial topic. But I have some colleagues for whom, whether it's they haven't had a lot of practice in the area talking about race, or they feel as if we have a disagreement, that's going to be something that's detrimental to our relationship, they're less likely to and almost less willing to engage in those discussions. So I would say it varies to what extent we talk about race. I am not scared to bring it up, and others I see more reticent. They are worried that what if it goes wrong?
Well, it's interesting you say that. Prepping for this interview and thinking about questions to ask you, I found myself thinking, well, wait, what if I unintentionally ask you an inappropriate question? That there can be that worry, especially if you're not used to talking about race a lot, that when you start to broach the issue, what if you end up saying something that is not what you mean to say at all, but you're just trying to have a conversation?
Yeah, and I would say that's okay. I would say as much. I would let you know my thoughts, and we would be able to work through that conflict. And I often tell my students, rather than walk on eggshells and try to not offend and maybe even self-censor because you're worried about offending, let's just commit to the fact that it's a topic that impacts all of our lives. And so if we're going to be willing to talk about it, we might trip up on our words and what we say, and that we're willing to work through the conflict rather than work really hard to avoid it.
Why is it important that it is raised at the office and that we do talk about it?
So it's important to talk about it because it's affecting lives of people who are in the office. It impacts people's productivity and level of engagement. And so if we want workplaces where people are working to their full capacity and are caring about the workplace and are not engaging in counterproductive work behaviors, we need to be attending to their needs. And for some people, in terms of their social identities, their racial identity, their experience as a racial or ethnic individual, which we all are, matters and impacts the extent to which they are able to be productive members. And sometimes that's because of the interactions they're having with other employees, and sometimes that's because of some needs that they have in terms of their racial or ethnic group.
When it comes to the office, what are the consequences if we don't talk about race?
If I'm not able to talk about it, if there's no mechanism for me to say something, if when I bring up the mention of race, it's assumed that inherently what I'm saying is being divisive rather than actually speaking what I see happening in the company, then you're going to lose talent.
You use the word divisive there, and I'm wondering if that's oftentimes a word that is used in response to someone of color raising an issue about diversity in a company, saying, oh, you're just being divisive.
Yes, absolutely. It's a common response. And I would say it's often used to shut down acknowledging what is. And so often in workplaces, when people of color want to talk about how their experience is different, it gets labeled as divisive, and that further shuts them down. And so I would say I've been talking to leaders in corporate spaces and on college campuses to urge them, and they are predominantly white men, to consider asking about the experience of people of color rather than waiting until someone has another really difficult, painful experience and comes to them or finds a way to make it known. That we shouldn't be surprised that people are having different experiences on the basis of race. This is not new. And it doesn't mean that every person is, but it would behoove us to understand the experience of people in our workplaces so that they can bring their whole self to work and impact the bottom line in a positive way.
In the article you wrote for the Harvard Business Review, How Managers Can Promote Healthy Discussions About Race, you outlined 3 steps that managers can take. And the first one was making a long-term investment. Can you explain that more to me?
The example I give there is that we often see ourselves doing 1 hour, 2 hour sessions on diversity, and that it's important, just like we would want to invest in things like operational excellence or leadership development, that we do the same for diversity, inclusion, and equity efforts. That we would never expect that after a 2-hour seminar or 2-hour workshop that someone is ready to be a director or someone is ready to be a Six Sigma. We understand that it takes time, it takes learning over time, it takes investment of resources to develop someone into a person who's competent in the area of operational excellence. And so my argument is that when it comes to diversity and inclusion and trying to reach equity in organization, we have to also take a long-term approach and see the long view. And it's not to say that those programs, the lunch and learns, are bad, but we shouldn't expect that they create a culture shift or create workplaces that are competent in being able to tackle issues of diversity.
Another step you said that managers can take to successfully bring in conversations about race is embracing and reframing conflicts. And I want to understand that better.
Yeah, so that kind of relates to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. The idea that rather than work to make conflict never happen, that we embrace the fact that we can have different opinions, we can see things differently, we can vote for different candidates and still be able to have a civil conversation. And that doesn't mean that people won't have strong opinions, but that conflict isn't always inherently an awful thing. You want to also think about the fact that having those strong facilitation skills won't only benefit conversations about race, but will benefit problem solving in teams and just stronger capabilities within the organization, right? And it's important that when we talk about facilitating these conversations, that we have people who are willing to be color cognizant rather than color blind and can work on their own development so that they aren't defensive, so that they can be open to hearing multiple sides and self-reflecting. It's a real skill to be able to facilitate racial dialogues.
A real skill. And that's what I wonder, which is if there's a danger that someone who lacks that skill, who lacks good management abilities, could make a situation worse in the workplace.
Yes, they could. And that's, we hope, something that we avoid.
So how do you do that, though? Because if you ask managers to engage in a conversation about this and to talk about this, and let's discuss what's happening with our lack of diversity, or let's talk about Black Lives Matter movement, for example, and you have a manager leading the discussion and he or she is not very astute and ends up saying all the wrong things or saying inappropriate things, but they were trying. You know, where's that line between appropriate and inappropriate? And you can make a situation a lot worse.
You could, and that's why I would encourage any manager who's going to do this work to prepare, right? And to potentially do their own work before they attempt to do it with their team. So if HR programs feel like they can give some basic facilitation teachings, that's great. Maybe managers in and of themselves do some small groups and practice and trade off being facilitator, and even maybe trade off being facilitator and participant, and try out some of those statements that you know are going to come up, right? So if you're going to talk about Black Lives Matter, you know you're going to have someone who says all lives matter. How will you navigate that? What will you say? How will you respond? So yes, you can make it worse, but with practice, you can also make for more cohesion. I would expect that a company that wants to support managers in doing this work would also support them in getting the skills.
Your third suggestion for promoting these healthy discussions about race had to do with proactive conversations. What are some of the questions that could be asked by a manager to be proactive?
I think as managers, we shouldn't be scared to ask our employees, what do you see as potential barriers? Do you see any bias in how we promote and how people are chosen for development opportunities, in terms of mentorship? And to ask that plain question. I think sometimes we don't ask because we're scared to get the answer that we might not want to hear. And the reality is if someone is having a different lived experience in the workplace, whether we ask about it or not, it's there. And so it can open the door sometimes for understanding on the manager's part. So I encourage managers to be curious about the experience of people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds, and to ask the direct question about obstacles, perceived bias, anything that they can do to facilitate success. Because you might be surprised that the person who has the lived experience that's different than yours might see things in a way and see things that you don't.
Basically, what you're saying is you as a manager should be invested and engaged in your employees, just like I would ask any of my direct reports, what are their career goals? What do they want to accomplish in the year? What issues are they having in the workplace? To then add into that, as a Hispanic person, do you feel that you're experiencing certain challenges? Just basically caring about your employees.
Yes, and being explicit about caring around social identities and specifically race, right? I think oftentimes we don't add that direct questions. And the way that you just said it, it sounds like a really simple ask and something that many of us could do better.
If you hear people saying, well, I'm uncomfortable talking about race, people who say that basically we're talking about white people in general?
Not necessarily. So when people say I'm uncomfortable talking about race, I often say, yes, it's uncomfortable sometimes to talk about race. And I normalize it a bit because you could have people of color who are uncomfortable talking about race because should they say something that is not, doesn't sit well with someone, very likely the person who's their direct report is not a person of color. And so it could come back to bite them. Or they could be seen as the angry black woman.
Right.
Or they could be seen as the complainer and, I thought they were a team player, but, they think X, Y, and Z is happening, or maybe they're not so cooperative.
So is that part of the problem that no one likes to feel uncomfortable, and with so much discussion about race happening outside of the workplace, that there could be this feeling of when I get to work, I just don't want it. Can I just do my job? Do I have to worry about it here too?
Perhaps. I would say, honestly, though, where I think it's coming from, I think some of that uncomfortability talking about it at work is that we're not practiced at talking about it anywhere. That when we talk about it outside of work, we typically talk about it in our own bubbles with people that we're pretty sure aren't far from us in our thinking, and that we're not really taking a risk. And to me, the danger of what we're seeing now in terms of media and on television is we're seeing, and we're almost unconsciously showing that if you have these conversations and you're coming from diametrically opposed views, that there could be some real clashes. Like it could get ugly. So it's almost reinforcing the fear of having the conversation. And I would say that oftentimes what we're shown aren't conversations. They are, confrontations. And so we see that that's the only way that race gets discussed. I think it's important that we talk about race because consistently in the history of our country, and if we're honest and ask the question, in the history of our companies, race has impacted who's hired, who's fired, who's promoted. And so given that history, we can't assume that that is no longer the case, even if it might not be legally sanctioned. And so we have to remain curious about the experience of people on the basis of race so that we can continue to make progress in our workplaces.
Kira, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Kira Hudson Banks is an assistant professor of psychology at St. Louis University and the author of the Harvard Business Review article, How Managers Can Promote Healthy Discussions About Race.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, October 27th, 2016. So I have been told. This is our weekly forum on workplace racism. Feel free to dial in. The number is 641-715-3640. The code is 564943#. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. The number again, 641-715-3640, and the code is 564943#. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. I will make sure that I give my little encouraging nudge once again for workplace racism, and certainly I know this is not the most enjoyable thing, I'll put it that way, to discuss. I don't think it's fun for most people to talk about how they have been mistreated on the job by racists, or problems that they've had with non-white people on the job. I don't think that's the moment that we are most proud of, generally speaking. But I think it's very important, constructive, for folks to participate during this broadcast in particular. I know Mr. Fuller encourages that we get away from being spectators as it relates to racism, counter-racism, solving this problem. We want to be active with regards to counter-racism and what we're doing in terms of our use of time and energy to solve this problem. I definitely think this is one we should have active participation. We have a lot of folks who dial in, listen to the program live. I'm sure that everybody listening is not able to speak if you're listening while you're at work, or you've got other things going on where you're not able to engage actively in the conversation. But I don't think that's the case for everybody. I think that we have a substantial number of folks who could actively participate during the discussion and have things that they could actually talk about, things happening on their workplace, things that have happened previously in your work history. I've said that consistently. I think that's also informative. We kind of reflect on things that have happened to us maybe when we didn't have as much information about racism. And so maybe we didn't, handle things in quite the way that we would now based on the information that we have about racism, white supremacy. I think that can be very instructive to reflect, to talk about things that are happening now, observations, even if they're not specifically things that are happening to you on your job. Just if you are observant about things that are happening to other non-white people on your job, happening to other whites on the job, if they're able to do things that you're pretty sure a non-white person would not be able to do. All of that is important. Dial in, share. I always think it's great to be able to learn from and see the similar patterns in terms of things that racists do to us on the job. Hopefully folks will dial in. You can also email. My email address, untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. If you drop me an email, I will read your commentary on the air. We can keep it anonymous, but if you know you're not able to participate via phone, you can email and I will read on the air, and then that way you can get feedback or commentary on whatever your situation happens to be. We had a few folks who wrote in this week. I'll try and make sure I read everything as we go. I might have to sprinkle a few of these in as we go along here. So the first one I didn't get to speak to, so they're referencing, this is from last Thursday when we did our workplace racism. One of our callers was talking about being depressed and just dealing with the terrorism and trauma on the job. And we addressed that last week, kind of towards the end of the program. So this is what the person who's writing in now, this is what she's referencing. So she said, I didn't get to speak to the lady or the gentleman that spoke last night because they both had serious situations, and I didn't want to speak without first giving some considerable thought to what I could genuinely offer them. If you happen to have access to them, please share this with them respectively. To the man suffering with depression, I think taking care of yourself is one of the best things you can do. Exercise has been proven to be just as, if not more effective than medication. Cook all of your food, no junk. If you smoke weed, stop. It produces more stress and anxiety than it relieves. Also, I agree, ask for and get help, but be aware that depending on who helps you, they could further confuse or injure you. If they are not hip or they do not have a proper, constructive, functioning definition of racism, they may not understand all that you are saying or where you are coming from. They may try to make you feel crazy or angry if they are white or white identified. Most, if not all, non-white people are confused about racism. Be careful. In my experience, awakening and traveling the journey hurts. It is painful. It feels hopeless. It is scary. But this is real. This is where we are. Sometimes confronting the fear, not situations that cause more problems, helps to reinforce our mind. I also recommend figuring out what you can do. I know that sounds cliche, but for instance, I know how you can feel, and the 3 things I do to keep my head above water and my emotions balanced. I go to the gym at least 5 times a week. I eat well. I have a podcast. I'm not famous, but doing it makes me feel good. And I tune into the cows because I find comfort in knowing there are others like me committed to learning about racism and replacing it with justice. Also, know that is what racist white supremacists want to do to us. Kill our spirit, kill our will, kill us. You are not alone. She has her email address, so the male caller who dialed in last week, if you want to drop your email, I can forward along. To the other caller, she's addressing as Thick Sister. This was a black female caller last week who dialed in. I think she was having issues with, unfortunately, another non-white person on the job being discourteous, making comments, what have you. We talked about that during the course of the broadcast as well. So she's back to the written commentary. While you were talking, a few things struck me. Eye contact. I do not know you, but I know that eye contact makes people very uncomfortable. Eye contact can help you to see situations before they arise, but they can also set the stage to keep those who intend to do you wrong away because you are confident and strong enough to look them in the eyes. I have found this to be very effective when dealing with white people and non-white people who perhaps have some sort of insecurity they wish to project upon me. As a non-white black woman, I too make it a point to compliment and praise other non-white black women. However, I do not do this to make friendly. This is twofold for me. One, I do it because I love us, and I want to love us as much as possible. Secondly, it is part of my mask. I am able to maneuver easier, and it keeps people's negative attention off of me. I also downplay any compliment I receive. This too is a strategy of mine. I keep in mind that the workplace is a plantation. There are no friends here. There you go. That would be one. Next, workplace racism anecdote. It's Jack, 25-year-old student from Atlanta. I want to tell of a situation at my workplace. My supervisor, a female suspect, blatantly practices racism against me at the job. Again, I work in the health aquatics department at my job, and I make pretty decent money doing lifeguarding and swim fitness classes. I discovered from a white male coworker that I could get an $8 raise if I became a swim instructor for a small white kids camp. I spoke with my supervisor about the position because I learned they were in need of more instructors. She said signing up for a class off the job's campus, and to my surprise, one of my white female coworkers was also enrolled in the program. Oh, wait a minute. Did I mess that up? She said that there's an opening, so make sure I didn't skip anything. Supervisor, she said that there's an opening for me, but I would have to get certified. I ended up signing up for a class off the job's campus, and to my surprise, one of my white female coworkers was also enrolled in the program. She revealed to me that she was taking the class in order to be a swim instructor. She said once the class was over, she was going to turn in her certificate, and I said I was going to do the same. After getting certified, we both sent her emails right around the same time. Somehow, my coworker began lessons the next week, and I was told that I have to watch my overtime because I had too many hours by my supervisor. I asked again later, and she said she would email me about an upcoming swim instructor meeting. I never received the email. If you guessed that I didn't get the position, you guessed right. But to make matters worse, I discovered that there were at least 5 white coworkers of mine who were teaching lessons and had no certification at all. The starting pay is $24.50 per hour, and there are 16-year-old high schoolers making more money than me, and I'm paying my way through college out of pocket. In total, I asked about the position 3 times, and each time they pretend that one will open for me soon. I began asking back in February, and it's now October, and I'm still certified. I stopped asking because I got the message loud and clear. One day this summer, I opened my check, and to my surprise, I received a $1 raise. In my eyes, this was just hush money to keep me at bay. End of transmission. I have a couple other different workplace situations. I think I will read them, just kind of disperse them in throughout the program, and then if other people email untiljustice@gmail.com. If other people email, then I will include theirs as well. In fact, I'll get in one more. This person wrote in earlier today. So he says, I'm forced to sit across from really gross race soldier who picks his nose and just does all sorts of really foul, disgusting things throughout the day, and spends most of his day watching movies online in addition to picking his nose and just being gross. I've been trying my best to record this. To make matters worse, he is always the first to reach into community food, of which I never partake. We're in a small office, so there isn't room for moving. That's his dilemma that he wrote in with. With the community food part, certainly it seems like you've already got an A+ there. Just, really discourage eating, participating in any sort of communal food in the work environment. If it's, sometimes they have like those potlucks where everybody makes something at home, or people bring things in, donuts or bagels or whatever it is. I would just get in the habit of not participating in any of that because you just never know what it could be, and people touching everything, and just avoid all of that. Just, this is battle that I'm dealing with. Some of the same people that are bringing in food items and cupcakes and whatever else are plotting to get me fired or written up. So just keep that in mind and keep up with what you're doing with not eating. If you said, the person that wrote this last commentary in, you said that it's a small environment, that it doesn't seem likely that you would be able to move very far. This might be one of those things where the person, it might not be something that you can necessarily get them like written up or fired for. I could see them just being like, oh, well, such and such is eccentric and, that's what he does, or he has allergies or whatever, just making up some kind of excuse for this sort of savage behavior. But in my opinion, I would just continue doing what you're doing, distance, not participating in the food, really hands off, making sure I do not leave a lot of items at my desk area so that my items aren't being touched. But I'm not sure that there's a whole lot you can do if you're in pretty small quarters. There's not really any place to move, and it's not, they're not doing something directly to you. I could see that one being one that he's going to probably be able to continue sitting there watching his movies and, being gross for the work day. But if folks have suggestions or comments for that, feel free. The number again, 641-715-3640, and the code is 564943 pound. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. All the folks who dialed in with a hand up, your line should be open. Feel free to chime in.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm a first-time caller. I've been listening to C.O.W.S for about 3 years. An incident happened with my son at his job, and I wanted to read the letter that he wrote to his district manager. He's 21 years old. The letter states, on Friday, October 21st, I went into my AutoZone store to purchase some brakes. I had been wearing a hooded jumpsuit with the hood on and was getting checked out when I saw one of my managers walk in. I said, "What's up?" and he didn't hear me, so I said it again. He answered, "Oh, hey, didn't recognize you in that hoodie, almost shot and killed you." This was said in front of 2 co-workers and another manager. I proceeded to tell him the joke was not funny at all and that I did not like the joke multiple times. He then said to me, "Hey man, I'm from Florida." After that was said, I told him again I did not like that joke and walked out. I then called my store manager at the time, he's black. These other people he's discussing, they're all white. I then called my store manager at the time to tell him what had happened, and he told me he would talk to him. So the next day I come into work, and the manager who made the jokes, so-called jokes, put some ordered part on the desk and says to him, "A cop is coming in to get these parts, so don't run away." So now this is the second time in a row that he said a racist remark towards me. I did not say anything, but you could certainly see in my face that I did not approve of the remark. So when I walked to the back to put a part up, he comes back and asks me, "What's up?" I told him that Friday he tried to play a joke on me that I thought was racist because if I was not black, he wouldn't have said that to me. He tried to insist he would have said it to me if I had not been black, and I told him I didn't believe him. Then I told him this is the next day after he's seen I didn't approve of the first remark, and he had said another racist joke. He proceeded to tell me that it wasn't racist, and I told him it was because the only reason he said that to me was because of the color of my skin. He then told me he plays like that with everyone, and I told him, well, I find that very offensive and would not like for you to play like that with me. I told him I did not want to argue and that I just wanted to let him know that it was very disrespectful, especially coming from my manager. He told me my bad about the comments, and that was the end of our conversation. I am very offended by the comments that he has said to me, and I don't believe his apology was sincere at all. These were definitely racist comments that shouldn't have been said to me or anyone else for that matter. The line was crossed not once but twice, and I feel that this cannot be thrown under the rug. That was the end of the letter.
Has this already been given to, I guess, the supervisor or whomever at your son's?
The district manager. What happened was after it occurred, he told me, I said, well, you need to report that. And he called the corporate office, and they kind of said, well, because he was asking, well, who do I call or contact if I have a complaint? And he was told to speak with your district manager. And he said, well, since I'm on the phone with you, I'll let you know. Because she said to him, well, you can speak to us or you can speak to him. So he explained to her what was going on, and she took down the information and said that she would forward it to his district manager. And when he went into work that day, his district manager was there. So he actually spoke to the district manager, who also was white, and he said, well, put it all in writing and send it to me, which he doesn't believe anything is going to happen. So what I told him to do is, because he's trying to look for another job. I said, well, see if you can get transferred. And I said, what you should do is when you go around him, try to record him. So if anything else occurs, you'll have that information as well. So he just sent this email, I believe, yesterday. So we're going to see what's going to happen next.
Okay. So that's already been transmitted. I guess this it would be good. That's why I try to say consistently to update. I guess it would be good, and not in a voyeuristic sense for us just to kind of gawk and gossip about what happened, but just to learn, to see what happens so we can get better in terms of how to handle these situations. We can see some situations, this seems to work. This seems to help solve problems without creating new problems, so we can, learn and improve as we go along. I was just going to say, I know Mr. Fuller, when I spoke with him last time about workplace issues, this was a few weeks back, one thing that he did recommend, he said that on these jobs, it's generally not just going to be one thing. It's not just going to be this white guy saying the hoodie comment, I almost shot you, or the police coming in that are going to come in, don't run, they're coming for a part. It's not just going to be that. It's going to be more coming down the road. So he says sometimes, depending on what it is, it might be in your best interest to just catalog, to not say anything until you have like 18 pages of documentation, or 100 different recordings of these type of things, and then to go report, so that you have a much stronger case because you have a lot more incidents. That was just one thing that he recommended, just keeping in mind the long game, that these are not going to be the only instances of you being abused on the job. But that notwithstanding, I would encourage, whenever you decide that you need to report this sort of thing, that you want to stop this sort of thing from happening, if you can, I would try to discourage the use of the word offense, like I was offended, or I took offense, or I found it offensive. Just in my view, I think using language like that, it sets it up as though my feelings were hurt. It makes it kind of sound, it kind of gives that impression as though this is kind of a schoolyard thing, and, I'm just a little child, and you said something, and my feelings were really hurt by that, and I was really sad. And I would just kind of encourage language that's more around, this was a violation of company policy, this does not seem like correct behavior for the workplace, putting it more in that, using that type of verbiage that's going to make it sound like this was a professional, that this was a professional workplace situation, and that this was a violation of company policy, as opposed to I just felt bad about this. Also, the racism thing, and even I totally agree. He would not have made these comments if your son was a white person. But I think in the workplace situation, it can be very, very hard to prove racism. That's one that I, kind of recommended over the years. Just it can be so tough I mean, almost unless they, call you a nigger or something of that nature, regardless of what they do, saying that I think this person, what they did or said was racist. Generally, the whites are just going to say, even regardless of what it is, oh my gosh, that was really sad. I'm so sorry that you had to endure that, and we're going to have a talking to. But I don't think, such and such is a racist. I mean, he's worked with us for 20 years, and we've never had an allegation. We never had a customer lodge a complaint. I don't think it was racist. And I think, we can that's generally going to be the way that they go about it. So, and that certainly, that's just something that I encourage VGQ. Everybody can come up with their own code. But I've just seen that if you allege racism, they're probably going to do a pretty good job. All the whites will rally together to make sure that you are not successful. And they'll just say that it was unfounded if you say it was racism. If you say it was unprofessional behavior, that conduct that is not in line with company policy and procedure, with company conduct, I think you can sometimes, unfortunately, you can make better progress. But I could be in error. Did other folks? Did y'all have comments on the letter that she read? How you would handle that sort of situation, or any suggestions?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I had a question. Does your son listen to the cows?
No. I've, as I learn, the more I come into an understanding of what racism is, I share it with him and my daughter. So he's learning, but I've never had him sit down and listen, which I really should.
My only suggestion would be that might be something. If he perhaps wasn't interested before, maybe after this experience, he might be interested in, feel a little bit more encouraged, like this is something I should look into or study or something like that, and that could be good. That way he can hear from a lot of different people and also start to study them some more too.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks.
Greetings, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes. To the parent, especially as a mother, have great influence over their children, and by you listening to the program and what you share with your child and or children, it seems as though that they are learning. I can tell by that letter and how he was expressing. And I'm going to deal with first what I think was right on the money as far as accuracy on how he spoke directly to the subject matter. And I think he was influenced by your transferring what you learned from the program and probably from your own experiences also, because I think that was correct to speak directly to that person immediately when the racist discourse occurred. As was mentioned, you have to be careful about your language. I would say that I suspect you are practicing racism. So from there, if it comes up again, the employer cannot accurately say that you call the person racist. And because even if they come back with him with the phrase, he could just say, "Well, it's on record that I didn't call him a racist. I said I suspect he could be practicing racism by what he said, and then repeat what he said." Right. Another thing that should be considered is, first of all, it should be expected when you are in close proximity with any white person or white persons, that they're going to say and or do something of that subject. And also what should be considered on his behalf, other than speaking directly to it, because I suspect from my experiences from a job that I retired from. By doing that, because there's so many other people that white person probably can mistreat and or subjugate in that way, he or she will probably go to somebody else. I would suspect. If your son is consistent at what he says and does around that person, that he probably will go somewhere else eventually. Over time, in my opinion, I don't see any significant thing happening to that individual white person. But as I mentioned before, it sounded like his discourse, for the most part, was accurate on speaking directly, as I mentioned, speaking directly to the subject matter that was thrown in his face, in his ears, and he spoke directly back to it and what he didn't like and why he didn't like it. And it was pretty clear to me as far as that concerned. And but it's just a few points that I mentioned that he may want to correct, and that's a positive. I know one thing: when I was 21, I was not nowhere close to being as proficient. I put it that way, as he is, and it has a lot to do with you. It has a lot to do with you and what you are attempting to do with your children. And so I commend you on that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Other folks with us have suggestions, questions. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Roz.
Greetings to you, Gus, and to callers and listeners. I think that because of your son's experiences with this particular terrorist, that this will be an appropriate time for him to record his conversation. So that way he'll be able to have a record, of what has been transpiring, and audio record. So even if the man tries to deny he said it, he can always play it back so they can hear him in his own words say what he said. They have USB recorders on Amazon that look like regular USB discs that can hold up to like 13 hours of recording. You can use it for college and all kinds of stuff. He can record his entire workday if he works an 8-hour shift, and if anything is said, he can actually he can cut it to the specific spots where the conversations are happening. So, and then also save it to his computer, so he'll have a running file of what has been happening. And when he accumulates enough material, he can definitely move forward with something because he has the guy recorded. So it's more than just his written word. And that way, he'll really have him in a situation he cannot back out of or try to talk his way out of at that point.
Right. Thanks.
And what state were you in? Is he in, or if you were both in the same state?
We're in Georgia.
In Georgia, okay. I'm going to look up the laws too, because I know some states do not allow recordings in court per se. Even though it's still something that's good to have to protect yourself, regardless of what the law is. But I'm going to still look it up just to see if it's legal for. Because in New York and a lot of other states, I saw, as long as one party is aware they're being recorded, then it's legal for them to record. So your son will be the party who's aware he's recording himself and his supervisor. So I'm going to look that up, and I'll chime in with that information in a little while. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thank you too, and I wish him the best as well.
I appreciate that.
Other folks have other questions or comments, suggestions for a black mother just out in talking about her son's situation. If you have your own commentary you would like to add, feel free. Should be with us. Quite a few other hands. I'm not sure why folks are being hesitant today, but folks with their hand up, feel free. If you have your own situation you would like to touch on, or if you'd like to respond to anything that you've heard thus far, feel free.
I'd like to comment on the clip, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I wrote down a few notes, and she's a black woman, correct? The woman that is speaking?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. So I, of course, am not criticizing her at all. But I've been kind of paying attention to the whole we need to talk about racism at the workplace. I could be incorrect. It could just be my own little personal opinion, but I really don't see that as helping us at all. And so some of the notes, I said that all of what she's saying is kind of based on not having a proper definition of racism. Like if you go with racism as just, you know, like white people could just be passive about it or they're confused about it. Like if you have any of that kind of stuff other than the functional definition that Gus provides or the definition that Dr. Welsing provides, then there's really no room for us to engage white people or ask them to talk about racism. And then accept, because then that would be really confrontational. Because every time they're like, oh, well, it's passive, or I don't mean to, or I don't know, there's really no room for that when you have a proper functioning, constructive definition of racism. So all of this is predicated on not having a definition. And then it's all kind of like, and not just with her clip, but there was like another woman, like a few other people have been talking about this. We really need to talk about racism in the workplace. And all this kind of based on asking white people to be nice. And I think about that. And that really just doesn't make any sense, especially because so many white people don't think there's really that big of a problem. So we're really asking them to do something that they've not really ever done. And I just think that that's illogical and kind of a little bit insane on our part, not to judge us, but, you know, that quote that says if you do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, that's a definition of insanity. For us to ask white people to care enough to do something or to want to do something, I don't think that that's healthy for us, especially with some of the other articles that I've read about white people and non-white people thinking that black people don't experience pain the same way, or that we, you know, all that kind of stuff is there. So no. And then it seems like this is also more of us, quote unquote, training them on how to be sentient beings or feeling human beings. Like we're asking them to have feelings and have a heart and have soul and feel bad about what they've done and do, you know, if they were going to do it, I think they would have done it by now. And then what it does is it outs us. It helps them refine their strategies, their tactics, and how they're going to perfect their deceiving fake face. And I just don't think that that's helpful for us. And I think it's really, really dangerous for us too, because we would be naive to think that we can create what so many of these organizations call safe spaces, where we're really going to say some real stuff to white people, and white people are going to be like, oh, well, this is a safe space, so when I walk out of here, of course I'm not going to treat her different. Please. White people, as far as I'm concerned, are, well, all people too, but really passive-aggressive, and will hold that against, like, there's no such thing as a safe space. That ties into that whole metaphysical belief of, all that manifestation and all that kind of stuff. We won't get into that. But I really feel like this is dangerous for black people. And if black people really do it, it's going to cost promotions. It's going to cost the job itself, a peaceful work environment. Next thing you know, all they've learned is you're the one that feels that way. Or, oh my, and she mentioned it in the clip, but that's really dangerous for black people because it's just dangerous for black people. Anyway. And then in listening to her and listening to other speakers, I realized this is kind of the problem with intellectualism, is it breeds or just produces, I'm not sure if it's by default, compartmentalizing thoughts. Like we can't put it all together. So we're only talking about like one specific thing. And I think that that's dangerous because racism is global and it's in all that we do. We can't really just compartmentalize and say, well, this is something that would be effective. That's my own personal opinion. So I would have loved to ask, how does this really help black people? What does this really do? Because if we want to sit around and like say what we got to say, we, as she said, do it in our circles. So what does that do? Is anyone going to get promoted? Is anyone going to get a raise? Are things going to be more peaceful? What is this really going to do for black people? And then I really just have to emphasize that white people know what they're doing. They're very, 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 very cognizant of what they're doing and how they feel and all of that. And that goes back into the functional definition of racism. When you know that, there's really no need for us to sit here and have these placating conversations. And that's all I wanted to say about the clip. I'll chime in for other stuff later. Thanks.
Yes, sir. I was just going to say really quick, the audio clip that was Dr. Kira Hudson Banks. Dr. Kira Hudson Banks, she is a black female, where she did this segment on Money Talking. It's a segment on WNYC, New York Public Radio, but Dr. Kira Hudson Banks, that was the black female's name in the segment. And to a lot of the points that you just made, in my view, this is like a fundamental misunderstanding of racism, white supremacy, a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be classified as white. If they cared about and were going to empathize with black people, we wouldn't have this problem to begin with. That's what I was thinking, and I could not see a practical implementation of the majority of what she was sharing in that clip. I just could not see that, how that would function in a work environment that I'm accustomed to. The male caller that just spoke up, were you going to comment, sir?
Yes. Greetings to Gus, all the listeners and callers. My workplace racism has been kind of crazy. Okay, so at my company, we did have a quote-unquote diverse. They didn't say it was a diverse training. They said it was a diversity something. So we have a food truck here. They drove around. They served like Indian and Mexican food and stuff like that. They had different flags on it. None related to any of the African flags. And then they also passed out a paper that had like questions on it, like I guess it was like small questionnaires, like if you walk on this side of the road at such and such time, and what country can you get a fine for it? They had like stupid stuff like that. And then also yesterday, I worked 16 hours, so I did overtime at a different building, not the main building that I work in. And when I first came in, I was the only black person working there. Everyone else was like Indian, mainly like the smartest people that work for my company. So they were in the back or whatever. All these white people were at the table. I was the only black person sitting at a separate table. And one of the gentlemen, he made like a crow noise. Now, I've experienced this before working at the main building, which I'm currently working at now. I experienced this before. So when it happened, I kind of got a little bit emotional, and I almost felt like crying because I had to suppress not saying anything or not doing anything because I didn't want to jeopardize my job. And I'm starting to get to the point where I'm starting to want to get a little bit uncodified just to make them feel uncomfortable. So I don't really know what to do going forward, dealing with racists whenever they what I call get out of line, or just do what they do, what they normally do. It's because like sometimes there's certain things that I can deal with, like all right, I'll just brush it off. But some things that make me get emotional, and like when I try to suppress it, is like, all right, I'm going to brush it off. But then it keeps bothering me and playing back in my head. So I kind of like get extremely emotional. Like, all right, I feel like crying. I feel like just putting my hands on someone. But I know if I do that, I'm going to lose in the long run. So it's like, I don't want to use a metaphor, but it's like being stuck between a rock and a hard place. And at times, I really don't know what to do. But then I maintain and make it through the day. But I think eventually, like whether I'm here or working somewhere else, eventually I'm probably going to snap and do something to someone, whether that's putting my hands on someone or saying something to someone or offering them outside. Eventually something's going to happen because it becomes a time where a person can take but so much. And I keep having family members that tell me, like, oh, go somewhere else, apply somewhere else. I keep telling them, like, from what I've learned, being a part of the cows is that you can go somewhere else, but you're definitely going to experience the same thing. It might be a little bit subtle, but you're definitely going to experience the same thing as long as you have to deal with whites. And if I'm dealing with all non-whites, it's going to be the same process, just in a different fashion because the system of racism, white supremacy exists. So non-white people, we can't work around each other without having some type of conflict. And luckily, I don't have any problems with non-white people. But it just seems like sometimes I feel like I had enough and I really feel like doing something to them sometimes. I mean, if racism is war, then sometimes I feel like they might just come on out and do whatever they feel like doing, or come on out and say whatever they feel like saying, so we can just get it over and stop playing the games. But I mean, I know that's extremely uncodified, but that's how I feel sometimes. And I don't know if anyone else has ever felt like that, but if so, then let me know that I'm not the only one that's going crazy. And I'm you.
Wow, thank you for sharing. I definitely can relate to your frustrations, and I think many people that are here can relate. You feel like you're being terrorized on the job regularly and can't respond or can't respond in the way that you would like to in addressing the racists who are doing these things. I guess the more recent situation where they were making crow's noises while you were seated. What about that situation, I guess, got you so frustrated where you said you didn't know whether you felt like crying or how you wanted to respond there, but what got you so frustrated about the situation in that moment?
Well, it's kind of because I feel like they're calling me a nigger, but at the same time, I felt like it was like a codified thing, like, hey, watch what you say, because it's one of them around. Because they were all talking. I didn't see who did the noise, but they were all sitting there talking, and I guess someone noticed me at the other table. Like I said, I normally don't work at these buildings, and I was there for overtime or whatever, but that's how I see it. Like, sometimes the main building where I currently am now, if I ride by in certain areas, they'll do the noise. But I guess they're doing it just to be terroristic, because when I drive past their area, I'm not standing in the area to hear what they're saying, and then it's like so much impact drills going off. I can barely hear what they're saying unless they're talking loud. So it bothers me, and I don't know. I mean, sometimes I just feel like, just call me a nigger. Just say what's really on your mind. You get what I mean? Because it's starting to become to a point where I'm thinking, either you say what you really feel or do what you really feel, or just leave me alone altogether, because it makes no sense to, like, play games. Because when you do that, eventually you're going to get to that end of the stick. I mean, I know I'm going to get the worst end of the stick, but I'm going to do something that they're not expecting, and me just randomly walk up to them and start choking one of them out, or whatever that is. And I already know, like, how the outcome is going to be for me. Well, it should be 10 times worse than what I can imagine, but it's definitely going to be something that they're not expecting.
I definitely feel you. It's a frustrating situation to be in. I guess the only thing I would say is, like you were saying before, in terms of wanting to respond in a way that is different from what they would anticipate. I think for racists, them being able to terrorize and abuse us and to get us so frustrated that we just lash out and hit one of them back or do some sort of counterviolence after we've been upset or frustrated on the job, they pretty much plan for that well. Like, it seems like you already understand that. They plan for that. That's not a problem. It's still, nigger out of line, call the police, and we'll just bring him down. Then we go through the whole procedure, and, now we'll have him making furniture for the next 8 years in greater confinement or whatever else we have him doing the gladiator fights or what have you. Like, they have a total system that is even prepared for that. So I think that is a big part of our challenge as attempted counter-racists, is to figure out ways to neutralize those efforts so that we are not getting easily frustrated by racists. I'll kind of see if some of the other folks have suggestions, but I really think it's important when Mr. Fuller and others have talked about the importance of being professional soldiers. That's the way that we should think about counter-racism. I'm a professional soldier, so we are behind enemy lines, and somebody says something nasty, recognizes me as an enemy combatant. I'm not going to fly off in a rage and throw my helmet down and, go duke it out with them. That's not the way that a professional soldier functions. You have your own agenda. You have a plan. You have your mission, what you're supposed to do. You carry that out. You don't, allow somebody to get you upset and off of what your responsibilities are as a soldier. I think that's the exact same way that we should aim to function under white supremacy. It's not saying that you just take any old insult from racist man, racist woman, racist child. Again, we're being insulted all day. But it is saying that I have a long-range plan about how I'm going to get back at them and how I'm going to solve this problem permanently. And I'm not going to be derailed by some little, childish antics that they're carrying on, name calling or whatever else they're doing, just trying to get on their nerves. And just really emphasize, racists do that a lot, where they just do little silly things just to try to upset us, just to try to get on our nerves so that they can further damage and harm us. But did other folks have suggestions for the caller that we just heard from?
Yes, sir.
Right on.
Don't assume, and I'm going to probably repeat what you just got to saying, Gus. Don't assume that white person or white persons, I don't know how many of them that are saying and doing these things, that they do not know exactly what they're doing. And although you may not be loudly, verbally reacting to it, they are experts at knowing that they are getting your attention. What helped me out tremendously was exactly what Gus was saying, is how Mr. Fuller explained that the codified response is for a non-white person is to be a professional soldier. Behave exactly as a professional soldier would be, because war is being waged against us. And that's just one of the more immediate means that it takes place right when you go to work. Right when you go to work, the enemy is right there waiting on you. Or they're arriving minutes after you are there. And from that point of view, it helps the victim of racism psychologically, because your expectations becomes more realistic, knowing who you have to deal with on a daily basis. In other words, you're not expecting the people to be nice and courteous, to you. And just study on what it means to be a professional soldier. Start developing your codified means on how you're going to react when this takes place. How my facial expressions, practice it. Practice it. If there's someone else that you reside with or someone close to you, have that discussion with them and ask them, because more than likely, if it's a non-white black person, they probably have a similar situations also, and you can help each other. In other words, there's also, I'm just suggesting there's a possibility you can broaden your assistance by involving, like I said, it's someone else, another non-white black person that you can communicate with, on this particular level. Tuning into the cows is one of those helpful situations. But the white people know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing, even though your reaction is quiet. It's more or less quiet how you express it. They know they're getting your attention. That's why it keeps going on, for one thing. And hopefully what I've had to say is something that may be helpful. Of knowing that to expect that type of behavior and in turn, govern yourself as a professional soldier would do in similar situations. Thank you.
Can I be heard?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I totally concur with both firefighter in Florida. Greetings to you, and of course with Gus as well. I think it's very important for us to understand that white people, this is their day-to-day activity and their function. This is what they love. This is their religion. And when we understand, we start to function like Gus said, as soldiers. I leave my house, and that's how I think. I'm leaving. I'm going into enemy territory. I'm surrounded by the enemy everywhere, and I'm wary of them. And one thing I would say, when I went through a specific situation where I was being intensely abused, and it had to do with not being trained properly, yet getting blamed for the errors I was making due to the lack of training. And there were a few times I had, some serious, feelings of wanting to just go totally postal in there and just really hurt some people. And the three people who were assaulting me were white females. And eventually I got deeper into my meditation, and then I started to calculate what can I do to make sure that I protect myself, and started thinking in the long term instead of the daily reality of what I was dealing with. How can I get to a cumulative position down the road where I can thwart their machinations? And what I did was I just would ask them regularly via email for training. The owner of the company, my the department head, my supervisor, and my two coworkers. And I would just send them the emails, and I would just keep a record of it. I sent a copy of the email to my house, and I printed a copy, and I just eventually had a folder that was thick. So when everything finally came to a head and they wanted to try and fire me, I basically went there like a lawyer, and I laid out all the emails, and I literally went to each one of them, and I showed them the email, and I asked, and I said, well, why didn't you respond to this email? And then this email, I just had them all piled up and just went through my whole thesis there. Nobody had a word to say. They couldn't fire me at all. They left me alone. They finally tried to train me, but they still gave me a really crappy training, which wasn't really training, if I can really even call it that. But eventually they got rid of me, but instead of me getting fired, what they did was they laid me off. They downsized me out, and I ended up getting a severance package and all kinds of stuff. So I didn't leave there empty-handed. I didn't leave there in a position where I was financially in trouble. I was left there in more of a situation of advantage to start looking for something else. So you want to start thinking of ways in which you can cumulatively gain the information you need to protect yourself from them while you're attempting to transition someplace else, if that's the case, or if you're going to try and relocate within the same company but to a different physical location. I would say if that's something that you can do. Also, you can also think about recording your conversations. For the female callers in Georgia, it is legal as long as one party is aware that they're recording the conversation. Then the conversation will hold up in court. It's not anything where you're breaking the law, so that's something you can do. And what state are you in, sir? Hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania? Okay, I'm going to look that up right now because I have it up on my phone. Pennsylvania, let me see. Okay, so it says, it is a felony to intercept or get any other person to intercept any wire, electronic, or oral communication without the consent of all the parties. Consent is not required of any parties if the parties do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy for their non-electronic communication. Okay, so it's saying consent is not recorded of any parties if the parties do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy for their for their non-electronic communication. Okay. All right. So it looks like as long as the people, when you're talking to them, do not expect any sort of privacy to take place, like if you call a company and they say before this conversation is being recorded, in that situation you're expecting a certain level of privacy. As long as there's not a situation where there's an expectation of privacy, and you're one of the people involved in the conversation, so I would still record it anyway, just for my records, and it's a great means of protecting yourself, at least in a work situation where if a person tries to tell you that they didn't say something they said, then you at least have them recorded, and you can just play it back right there in the office. This is what was said, and that's it. And once it's played, you can't take it back. So I would suggest, again, the USB disc, they have them On Amazon, it's cheap as $11.99. When you get it, it can hold up to 13 hours of straight conversation. You can record it, save it to your computer every day, chop it so if you need get to the specific areas where the racism was practiced, and you can keep a running tally of that those audio files. Thanks again, and I'll mute my line.
Do we have other folks? I know other people have joined the line. Do we have other people who either had commentary from the male caller we just heard from, the black mother we heard from earlier, or anything else that you wanted to comment on, ask questions about? You should be with us. Any other callers?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Gus. Hello, callers. This is Miss Medge, a dental assistant out in Portland, Oregon. Before I was a dental assistant, I worked at the mall. And I had I guess this was a temporary position. I was pretty young when this happened. I mean, I guess I'm still young now, but I was like 17, 18. And I got in this summer part-time staying at the mall, and I was really excited about it. And of course, you get clothes and the discounts, so you're a teenager and you love that. It's great. And so I decided one day I was going to use my discount. But I guess this kind of would tie into the black mother in Georgia and her son, and him being a younger man and trying to put all this together. But the point I want to tie into is that when you go to people with these things, you have to think about, I guess, what Laura said about the future, what it is that you want. But anyways, on with this story. I worked at this clothing store for summer and back to school. And I decided the few times that I worked there to buy stuff and to use my discount. And this particular day, my brother came in and he wanted, our policy was that it's for family only. Friends got, can't remember exactly the policy, but it was basically family only, and friends got some other discount, but it was a really big discount, so it's a family member. So he comes into the store one day, and he's gonna buy a bunch of stuff on my discount. And my brother, to give you context, he is a tragic mulatto, but I love him. He's a half white person. But he's my half brother, but we have the same mother, and we've lived together, our whole life. So he comes into the store to buy stuff. He gets, goes through and gets a bunch of jeans and, T-shirts and stuff. Basically, he just gets what he wants. So we go up to the counter, and, he's purchasing everything, and I'm getting my stuff, and everything's working out great. And we leave the store thinking, everything's hunky-dory. We're going to go somewhere else in the mall and check stuff out. And, we're just walking at a normal pace because it's not like we stole anything. And the manager is a older, middle-aged, frumpier white woman who works at a teenage store. And, this white woman was running. She ran. I never seen this woman ran. She ran out of the store. And, we were almost towards the door. And she, ran into us and said, "Come back into the store. I've got to check this out. I've got to look. I need to look at the receipt," and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm like, okay, whatever, So we go back into the store, no problem. I'll show her the receipt. We paid for it. His money's good. My money's good. So we go back in there, and she's going through the discount, and she sees that he got the family discount. And she says, "Well, he can't be your brother. He's too light-skinned." And, of course, my brother starts cracking up. We started cracking up. And, I was like, "Well, this is my brother, blah, blah, blah. What do you want, a DNA test?" And she says, I can't remember what she said. This was years ago when I was 17. I'm 33 now. But anyways, I can't remember word for word. But I think he ended up showing her his ID, which, we have the same last name because we're related. And So, he gave her his ID, so, she was looking pretty silly, and, everything's fine. He's an actual family member, so, everything goes back in the bag. Nothing to return here, no fraud, nothing stolen, no theft. So we leave the store, and, we're laughing, and, just, I didn't make a big deal out of it. I was just like, that was weird. And then my mother always said, make mental notes. And if you can't remember them, write them down. So weeks and weeks later, when it came close for me to be at the end of my time here at the store, I started, looking at another, they have other stores. They have lots of other stores, actually. And there was a position that opened up. And at the next mall across town, which was actually very close to my house. So, of course, I went there. I introduced myself to the manager. I applied. I did all the things that you're supposed to do in the policy to transfer. And while I'm still there, I go back to my store and I let them know, I applied for the position at the other store. And so, this transfer is supposed to go through. But then guess who has to approve my transfer? This white woman. And she's supposed to be leaving to, I think, go get her own store somewhere else, whatever. So, they've been watching her like a hawk. Because she's like, what you call, like, they're grooming her to do something else at another store. So this had to come up. And when she had to write my transfer, I can't remember what it is she had what information that she needed, but basically I had to, what's the word? I guess, she brought this up, and I was just like, I know you don't want me to tell anybody that the things that that you said when my brother came in here to buy the stuff, and because she's being watched by all these people, and then so that comes up, and she doesn't say anything. She just signs the paper. My transfer goes through. I move on to the next store. So back to what I was saying earlier. When these things happen to you, make mental notes. I wouldn't recommend doing anything particular at the time. When things happen, it's often best to let it sit on you so you can think about what it is that you want, what it is that you want to gain from this, what do you want to happen. And I found out a few weeks later I wanted a job somewhere else. So I ended up getting it because of this woman and her ways. So that's what I wanted to say and put into there. And to the other black gentleman having problems in Pennsylvania, I wish him the best. I've totally been there when people are getting on your nerves and you're in a place. The thing that I would say to you is that you can't let them see you sweat. I mean, there were plenty of times when I was working at a dental office with these, all terroristic white people, and I'm like the only black person in the office where, I had to go out in my car on my lunch break, cry, call my mother, cry some more, and, snot on the phone, everything, get myself together, pat my face dry, and go back to work like nothing ever happened. And you find something that makes you happy, some sort of relief. I love video games, if you haven't noticed that already about me, when I call into this show. It is very therapeutic for me. Get on either by myself or with friends and shoot at fake things. So I wish you the best. Greetings and well wishes to everybody.
It's just heard from our caller up in Oregon, and I think it's important what she said about making a note of things so that you can think about how you want to proceed. If you want to pursue it, if you want to report the issue, or if you just want to move on with where things are and not report it as an issue. I do think it's important. That's why I've talked consistently about the workplace journal. Try to write down as many of the pertinent details if you're going to think about it for a while, because you would be surprised. your memory, our memories, are not as good as we think often. And particularly when you're being stressed and traumatized, you can forget details. If you think about it, and then sometimes you might end up thinking about it for a week or a month before you decide, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to proceed with things. And sometimes it might even take longer than that. You might not remember every exact detail after a month or 6 months or a year. Just try, and I mean, it doesn't have to be exhaustive. You can take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and just try to write down some of the pertinent details, what was said, what was done, that sort of thing, so you'll have a record of, exactly what happened. Other folks that are on the line, if you have commentary, you should be with us. Feel free to chime in, particularly if we have not heard from you.
May I be heard?
Let's see. Let's get our caller at 7722.
Yes, this is Lamine and Casey. Greetings to the host and the listeners.
Greetings.
I have not heard the entire series. I haven't been in all the series, but I have heard some of the recordings online of the workplace series. And I want to share my experience with workplace white supremacy, racism, as far as from the corporate plantation as well as the quote-unquote self-employed global plantation. I worked in the trades, was in the union for several years. I remember one of my first workplace experiences with white supremacy was with a young man, a white male, whose father was a supervisor. And as 18-year-olds, we would joke back and forth, and he would say a lot of hurtful, at the end of the day, racist things. And when I would make verbal retaliations, because I was very good at putting words together, I would always seem to have very humiliating projects handed to me. It got to the point where I was actually laid off the day after an argument with the supervisor's son. And, as 18-year-old, it was pretty rough on me at that time. I moved through the trades, working as an electrician for several years, and getting into facilities, becoming a member of middle management, thinking that white people who were more educated, would be more responsive to treating non-white people with more respect. That, of course, is, as stated earlier, a huge mistake in my misunderstanding. As a member of middle management, I was treated even more childlike. I think that's a very good phrase to use, because treated as a child was extremely common, and specifically the things that would be done where I would be spoken over in public. In meetings, I would be told to be quiet. I would be told that I should not worry about things. I mean, the same way that I imagine speaking to my children. I finally decided after several years and a lot of the compensatory code books, kind of learning about racism and how it works, that the stress I was being put under and the toll that it was taking on my family because of my day-to-day duties at work, I decided to leave the corporate plantation and to become self-employed. I use that term loosely because the money still comes from white people. I started a business. I've started several small businesses in the past, but now being self-employed, I work in a commercial residential contractor on home repair. Interestingly enough, the first time that I was exposed to the phrase racist child was listening to this program, and I have a lot of experience with racist children now, surprisingly, in the commercial and home repair, specifically in home repair situations. Sometimes there are other non-white children. They're not black, but other non-white children, but some white children specifically have practiced racism in I've noticed that when parents' backs are turned and I'm doing repairs at home, children like to make funny faces at me. Sometimes they will poke at me. I remember an instance of a non-white child in one case who would hold the door shut when her father's back was turned. And it's very challenging to work in someone's home when their child is harassing you. I've seen this a lot from young white children, and the behavior when their parents are not looking is shocking to one degree, but then again, when the term racist child is used, it makes complete sense. Another challenge that I have is the towns that I work in. I work in the metropolitan area of Kansas City, which the demographics of our city, this particular city, is about 86% white, and there are other non-whites that comprise the rest of it. But that's very deceiving because the majority of the outlying cities where the quote-unquote suburbs are located, the population is generally anywhere from 85 to 95% white. So the majority of my clients, when they hear me on the phone, believe that I am a white male and are very excited to see me, to the point that when I show up for the majority of my appointments, I immediately see a physical reaction on the person's face when a black male, I'm rather dark, I guess I would say I have heavily melanated black male, walks up to their door. And of course, they hear my voice, and you can just see the disconnect. A lot of times, their demeanor will change. I immediately notice that their attitude towards me change, and I believe that they're practicing racism. I would say to a lot of the listeners, some who may feel disheartened about their workplace situation, the solution is not finding another job. It's not being self-employed. The solution is replacing the system of racism and white supremacy. White people will continue to behave in this manner, regardless of whether you're quote-unquote self-employed or you work on the corporate plantation. We do have to protect ourselves at all times, and that also, to me, means protecting our minds as well as our physical beings. And the fact of the matter is that this behavior will continue. I do have business with non-white, some black clients in the city which I live. I enjoy working with non-whites, specifically blacks, in the community, and that was a big motivation for me to leave the corporate plantation. However, I am very, very aware that the majority of my money, just as Mr. Fuller says, the people who have are the ones who are going to be the white supremacists. They have the collective amount of knowledge in the world, and my experience has shown me they also have the collective amount of money. So the majority of money, it's a sad reality, but the truth is that they hold the wealth in a system of racism, white supremacy. In my opinion, capitalism is just an economic arm. But I do want to say to the listeners, do not be disheartened, and we just constantly have to stay codified. The notion that we could play with these people will cause more destruction, specifically to us and other non-white people, and the notion that these people will change. That is a very, to go into a situation with that. Sometimes I'm in people's homes who, if they perceive me as a threat, have posters that are posted that say that they shoot intruders. So I have no doubt in my mind that these people, if they feel threatened, would take my life in a second. That to me just makes me aware of the mentality of people who practice racism and how we have to be on guard at all times. I'll take my call offline. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Wow. I was going to ask that caller a question, but I was going to check in with some of the folks we have not heard from. Other callers that we have not heard from at all. If you had commentary.
Good evening. Can I be heard?
Hello. Can I be heard?
Let's see. Let's get the astute one. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Gus. Greetings to everyone. I'll try to keep this brief. That was very interesting what the gentleman just said before about the children practicing racism. This happened a few years ago on my former workplace. There was a young black male and then a supervisor who was a white male. And we have, in my workplace, we had this so-called mentorship program, which is supposed to be very important, supposed to be able to guide, younger workers to help them improve themselves personally and professionally. And it was supposed to be taken seriously, but for what I gathered from it, it was just what we call a check in the box, so to speak, just something we're doing to make it look like we're, grooming people to be better professionals. But anyway, this young black male had a mentor who was a white male. Again, he was a supervisor. And I guess there are required meetings, personal meetings, where you have to sit down and talk with your mentor or your mentee and just discuss, how your career is going. This is the military. And anyway, so the black male came and talked to me right after this meeting he had with his mentor, and he was like, "Man, I can't believe that." And I was like, "What happened?" He's like, "Well, it was a real unproductive meeting. We just sat down, was like, hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah." And at the end of the meeting, as the young black male walked out, the white male was like, "Well, you need to get yourself together. You can't play basketball and rap for the rest of your life." And that's how he ended the meeting. Another incident was with myself, and this was when I was quite a bit more confused. I was sending an email to quite a few people at one time. It was a group email. And, of course, I try to use professional language. I was real formal. And I sent the email out. Then maybe about 30 minutes later, some white female, she was like in the same position I was in. I think she was under me as far as rank or whatever. And she was like, "Oh, wow, you were very articulate on your email. That it sounded so great, so professional, so good." And at the time, I took it as a compliment. I was like, okay, wow, I impressed the white person. I guess I'm doing okay. But of course, she was really just practicing racism. So even in these compliments that they give, sometimes they're practicing racism. And I wanted to speak. Lastly, I'd like to speak on. I used to volunteer for a summer camp that had quite a bit of white children or white young people that were in the camp. And occasionally, like, I'd be sitting down doing something, then a white kid would come out of nowhere and sit by me and just start talking to me, like just really talking to me. And, I'd be nice or whatever, cordial. And, we would talk a lot, and then maybe we'd, speak later in the day. We'd kind of, I don't want to say develop a relationship, because I don't believe in any type of relationships with white people like that, but definitely. But anyway, I saw this child later on, maybe a couple of days later or a day afterwards, with their parent, their mother, and I spoke to the child, just out of just being familiar with the child, and that child just kept going like they didn't even see me. And I know the child saw me and heard me. And I believe the child was just being, a racist will probably say, well, the child was just being a child. They don't know any better. They're not paying attention. But I believe the child was really studying me, just doing their just a study on me, just talking to me and seeing how I talk and react. And then, it's like, okay, after my study is done, I have no use for you. That's how I interpreted the situation. And I don't put anything past any white children, adults. It doesn't matter. But that's all I have. Thanks for letting me share.
Amen. Amen. All of them should be on the suspect list. No exceptions. The caller, I'm trying to go in order, kind of, sort of, the people, the way I heard people before. Let's see, the person. Let's see. Forgive. I'm trying to go through, and was it the caller at 07480748? Did you have a commentary that you were going to share? 0748.
Yes, sir. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. I have some observations that I've encountered the last couple of weeks. The first is, I have wrote some down. The first was that I was at the post office because I have to take a trip over there to get the incoming mail for the courthouse. And I guess sometimes me and the postman will have just regular conversations, and they've been sending in these I think they call it absentee ballots, and because they're doing the early voting down here in Florida. So a lot of the trucks have been, delaying the mail delivery process. So we pretty much were talking about how they mail out stuff for political campaigns. And he brought up that they pretty much have to be efficient with getting people's, ballots to wherever they need to be and things like that, because there was a candidate a few years ago that I guess took issue, but it was justifiable because they apparently, he told me this, that I don't know if it was him, but it was some people that worked at the post office. They were throwing away a black candidate's political ads. I guess that's what you call them, where they send to people's residences and, their mailbox. So he said they were pretty much just throwing away hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of ads, because the person, the name he told me, I recognized that it was a black female. So I was like, wow, I never heard of nothing like that. So he was saying after that incident that they had to start making sure they were more efficient with delivering things concerning politics, but pretty much it should be with anything that you send through the post office. And the second observation was I had this encounter with it wasn't really me, but I was at my service desk, and the white female that I work with was talking to this, I guess it was a couple coming in for a marriage license, and the two of them sat down because they have to apply on the computer to to start the marriage license process. So, they have to fill out their information. Now, I made an observation about this a couple of months ago, but this was done in a different type of context, because one of the couples, one of the parties, I guess it might have been a non-white person. He was kind of saying far away, beige skin or whatever. And one of them, the female, it was a male and female couple. The female was a blonde-haired white woman. So she was definitely making the decisions when it came to the race part. So she was saying, well, I thought you said you were Asian. They started having this conversation. And he says, well, I'm about 25% Asian. And, they got into making these stereotypical jokes. And he says, well, my grandma is fresh off the boat. So everybody started laughing. So she says, yeah, you know what, you might as well just go ahead and pick white. And then now a white woman said that. Now just go ahead and check on white. So he he went and checked all white really quick. So I heard them over there in the session where the word Caucasian came up. So this person apparently may have been confused about what to check off. And, they have like a plethora of different labels and classifications. So that was another interesting observation. And I had a conversation with my white coworker where she was saying how she and her friends makes these text message discussions, and she was saying something about a meme because racists use these memes now on the internet, and I think it was something about I like my I like my men like I like my grapes dark or something like that. So she held up her phone. Now what I noticed is that she don't really talk about this kind of stuff when the other two black females are around. All right, so this is the second time she had a conversation like that. But there are still times where, we aren't necessarily alone in there. But she revealed that this person sent this to her, and she said that the reply to that was 25 at a time, like how you eat a lot of grapes. So she was comparing that to, fetishizing black people. So, that was very interesting how she pretty much revealed that. And I'm like, man, she just revealed that like it wasn't nothing. So, very, very, very interesting. So that's all I have right now. Thank
you. The first segment that you shared about in particular, where they were trashing the campaign ads for a black candidate, a black female candidate, I thought that was especially significant. We talk about the efforts to sabotage black people, that sort of thing happening. We're just and no explanation. We can't figure it out. The niggers' flyers just ended up in the trash somehow. I don't know. We've got to make a new code to make sure this sort of thing doesn't happen again. That is very, very typical. And that's another one that I mean when we talk about this being implicit bias, right? That's what happened to the flyers. Every time when these sort of things happen, it is to the detriment of black people. It's not ignorance where this black female candidate got like all of her flyers for free, right? It's not where someone makes that sort of error, or they post them all over town and do all that for free, or they charge her, 20% less than what they were supposed to, or something like that. It's not ever anything that works out to black people's benefit. It's always something to our detriment and to the benefit of whites. And sometimes their benefit is just that black people are going to suffer. It's not even that they're getting anything tangible out of this. Anywho, the caller at 4683. 4683, did you have commentary you were going to share?
Yo, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hey man, good evening everybody. I was school because I'm on the plantation right now, stepping outside though. But anyhow, I had a situation at work last week where my immediate supervisor, he a black male, right? Excuse me. So he in a tragic arrangement, right? So me and him had kind of become friends over time or whatever. And so he try to act like he like to talk about, kind of racism and stuff, right? So we always having these little talks about the news, and then he got pulled over by the police a few times. They followed him around up here. And so last week, the day after they had the Trump and the Hillary roasting, so I came to work. I was saying something to him about that, right? So anyhow, we get to talking or whatever, and so the machine go down. So when the machine go down, it kind of get quiet in the plant. And I mean, soon as the machine go down, he just flipped mode. He was like, well, when is you going to learn that we are our own worst enemies? So I was like, hold on, man, what you mean right there? So he was like, black people, we shoot ourselves in the foot. I mean, you want to come in here every day and blame the white man for everything that's going wrong with black people. Then you want to say that all white people is bad. And I'm talking about, man, it's completely quiet in the plant. All the white people standing over there. And they looking at us, right? And I'm like, wow, where this come from? Because now, you know, when it's some situations that affect me, you know, when he come to work, he comes straight, I'm talking about first thing in the morning, he come beelining straight to me to tell me about something where he done went through the day before, right? But all of a sudden this day, and then, you know, I try not to talk about black people. I know we ain't supposed to be doing that, you know, but now this brother came up here, man, and he an older brother, he about here late 50s, but I know he say he is a veteran. You know, and he just had a heart attack a couple of weeks ago, but now we have a lot of functions in our job where, you know, the white people, they bring food and drinks and all this, and then they have like Christmas parties and retirement parties, you know. So last Christmas I did stop through the Christmas party, and I seen him, and now he be sharp too. Now he be dressing. You know, he be clean. And, man, this brother got the most fat, stanky white lady up here. I'm talking about lyrically stank when you sit around her. And he be over here dressed up nice. Then she sitting there with a holy T-shirt and some sweatpants or some gym shorts on. You know, and he love to bring that white lady out everywhere, man. Everywhere he always bringing her out. You know, and then so the way that I talk, you know, I use white people and, you know, white supremacy kind of words I use, and man, he just couldn't deal with it. But yeah, he jumped out there, and so then after everything had calmed down, I came back to him. I said, man, you know what? You saying black people is our own worst enemies, and you right, man, because you is the type of black person that you talking about. You describing yourself. And then he went back into it again, and then I just so happened to turn around. It was white people standing behind him. You know, but I ain't here seeing them. But when the white people come around, he love to scream about, I think, all white people is bad, this and that. You know. But yeah, man, that was just something that I had dealt with last week at work. You know, sometimes it ain't just the white man, it ain't just the enemy too, man. Sometimes you got some black people, you got to be careful who you talk to on the plantation anyway, man. You know, so, you know, that's all I had, boy. I'm going to mute my line. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to reiterate, I've said this many times over the years, exactly what he just said. You really have to be cautious about who you're talking to at work, period. White person, non-white person, whatever. I've said I discourage talking about racism even with other black people on the job. Now, I know everybody doesn't subscribe to that. I think Roz has repeatedly shared different incidents where he's talked to other non-white people on the job and it worked out constructively. I think Thomas in New York has done this a few times. I think we've had several non-white people call in over the years who talked about, you know, they have done this and it worked out well. Unfortunately, we have also had some where the non-white person did this and it did not work out well. And particularly if any non-white person that's in any sort of tragic arrangement, engaged in any sort of sexual activity with someone classified as white, I'm not going to be talking about racism with that person. My suspicion level would be very high that, you know, all it would take is catching them on the wrong day where that white person has flared up at them, or they had a disagreement with that white person, or maybe they tried to bring up racism with that white person, they had some with that white person, and that brought up a conflict. Anything could have gone wrong with that situation or what have you, and that will impact negatively how they are going to treat me for the day. It just seems like, particularly what you described in that situation, consciously, subconsciously, like he was trying to show the whites that he was down with them and that he was not cool with you or what have you. I've got no allegiance with this nigger, and let me prove it to you. That type of thing. Maybe he was doing it deliberately, maybe not. The only thing I would say is if you are a victim of racism, right, and you recognize, you understand some element of racism, white supremacy, in that sort of situation, I would try my best to not be entertainment for race soldiers, to just squabble with another victim of racism, even if, I have a totally different viewpoint about what this non-white person is doing. What they're doing is not logical. Even with all that, I would really make an effort to avoid just creating a spectacle for race soldiers to enjoy. Oh, the machines went down. We just watched these niggers, argue with each other for the next 10 minutes until we can get back to work. This will be great. Yeah, you go ahead, tell it. Right. Look at it. That's great. Got our own little private coon show. That, I would just try to avoid that to the best of my ability. Like if I really feel like I got to say something to address what he's saying, I can do that in private. And that's something I recommend anyway. If you have a different opinion than another non-white person, fine, no problem. Take it up with that person directly and privately. It's been my experience that a lot of times when these sort of things happen publicly and everybody has an ego and they don't want to look bad in front of everybody, that can cause things to flare way out of proportion. It's been my experience, you'll get a more constructive result. You can do things privately. So that would be, I guess, two-pronged. Privately, if you got to say something, and then avoid being a show for other racists and even other non-white people. That's just not something I would want to participate in on a job. Our caller in Michigan, female caller in Michigan, did you have commentary, questions?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Gus, and to the callers and listeners. I just wanted to share my observations at the law firm that I am at. I did get an opportunity to hear racist jokes today. The white female employees, we have a weekly staff meeting, and they donated $25 to wear jeans for breast cancer. And so that was just for the month of October. And so one of the female workers was saying, oh my goodness, we want to wear jeans for the rest of the year. What do we need to do? And the office manager, she said, well, I'm not sure if we'll be able to do that. And so one of the white females, she said, well, can we just, find another charity to donate to? We'll pay $25 more if we're able to wear jeans. And then she said, yeah, we can donate to some Indians. We did steal their country. We did steal. I'm sure we could find an Indian or somebody to donate it to. And then, they all just kind of laughed and made jokes about that. And then another one was saying, well, yeah, Thanksgiving coming around. We can find, there's just tons of needy people. We could just, go into Detroit, and find some needy family. And so they all were like, yeah, we can find a just poor family to donate to. And so all this so they can wear jeans. And so that was a big joke. And the other observation that I made notation of, there's a younger white female, she's about 23, 24, and she goes around the office and she's really immature. She goes around and she's tripping, the even some of the other employees. She's and then she's making a joke about it, sticking her leg out and trying to trip them, and just childish behavior. And I'm just observing and watching and noticing how, everyone just laughs and thinks it's funny. It's dangerous because if someone gets hurt, that's a lawsuit. We're in a law firm. And they just laugh and think that, what she's doing is so comical. No one is addressing it. No one is, reporting it. They're aware of it. And I just made notation of how playful she is and how they're just enabling it, or just, for lack of better words, just edging her on. So I made notation of that. It's really just interesting to see that whole thing because I've seen her, actually trip people. So it's weird because I'm thinking, how old are we? It's kind of something I wasn't expecting to see out of so-called adults. So those were the notes that I made, and I will mute my line.
Wow. No boundaries in the workplace at all. That is amazing. Do we have other callers that we have not heard from at all? Any callers that we have not heard? Yes, sir.
This is Josh from Michigan. I called in last week. The investigation for my job work problem has been concluded. I got an update about it. But if you don't remember me, I was having problems being uncodified and sloppy at work and everything, and just really emotional at everything I was learning about racism, white supremacy, and just had some really bad thoughts in my mind. And so that's me. I guess the investigation has been concluded for my manager, who's been giving me too much work, too little time to complete it, who's been speaking to me like I'm a child, just yelling and mistreating both non-white and white subordinates underneath her in our department. So I guess also another part of that mistreatment was we weren't being allowed to take our breaks when our breaks are mandatory, but she was keeping us from taking them. So what happened was she was given training. So I would notice some days that she wouldn't be in, and they were saying that she was going to some kind of manager training, and I thought it was mandatory for all the managers at our at my job. But I guess it was just specific training for her. And I find that out because that's what my store manager, the suspected racist, white supremacist above her, her boss, when we had our meeting, that's what he said. He said that what she was doing was wrong, and we got her some manager training. So I don't know how far that's going to go. I have noticed that she has been more refined. She hasn't been. She's one of those kind of suspected racists that'll just tell you, what she's thinking on her mind. She'll tell you about her problems, and she'll, she's very unrefined, and she's become refined. And I think that's because of the whole situation, and maybe perhaps the training that she was forced to go through. And, so everyone who was working under her at that time, we were given a paycheck accumulating all of the breaks that we were missing. And so that was nice. I got an extra paycheck that averages my biweekly pay. So that was nice, and I very much needed that. So and they're going to free therapy to speak to. And at first I was thinking about getting a white therapist, is what I was telling the people on the phone that were going to help me with that, just to practice counter racism against them. But I guess if I'm really having an issue with thinking about not living anymore, I figure I'd just rather get a non-white person, a black person in particular, so that I can seriously deal with that issue and not deal with not practice counter racist codification, because pretty much everyone at my job knows that, he's the guy that talks about race, and I'll be reading the ISIS papers on my break, and people would look at it and, what is he reading? Just things like that. So I'm already kind of known for that. And another work observation, we have a new person that I've been training, suspected racist white man, and we were talking about race, and I expressed my views to him, and he told me his views. And I asked him for any racist jokes that he had been told or heard. And I've never heard it before, but you might have. And the joke is, how do you know if you have any nigger in your family tree? You go out in your backyard to take a look. And then he said, how do you get the nigger out of your tree? You go tell some Mexicans that you have a piñata. So that's a joke. And I noticed another workplace observation several months ago, before the investigation was completed. I'm an avid note taker, and I'm an artist, so inspiration sort of hits me, by the minute at times, and I just will pull out a piece of paper or my sketchbook or whatever, and I'll take a note in it to so I don't forget something I can draw or paint or whatever, or use in a film later on. And one time, my suspected racist manager, I left my piece of paper kind of open with my pen in it, and she kind of picked it up and looked at it, and I was like, oh, that's mine. And she said, oh, okay. But she never looked at me when she said, oh, okay. She was reading my note. And I was just observation that she very, very observant. The note didn't have anything to do with our workplace problem, because I also had been keeping a workplace diary after learning about it on the cows, and I'm glad that wasn't it. But yeah, so she was very, very observant, very, very much watching what her Negro was doing while in her presence. And I pretty much agree with Mr. Fuller when he said, if you need help, you ask the white supremacists for help, and they may or may not give you constructive help. And I found that speaking up about my problem was helpful. The white supremacists are going to pay for my therapy. That's a perk, I guess. And they gave me some money for the grief that she's been causing me. And to the black male was one of the earlier callers who was having problems in the lunchroom, while they were calling them crows. I feel exactly how you feel. Maybe you can just put on some headphones, or maybe you can make a counter-racist experiment out of it and just go ask them, questions. It may not be necessarily have to be about what they're doing to you, but maybe ask them questions, and maybe you might get something that you can use from your local white supremacists that might make it easier for you to work around them. I don't know what, really, but since everyone at my job knows that I talk about race, I pretty much try to use it to my advantage by practicing codification against them, because that is my biggest problem, is being uncodified. So, and it has helped. I've learned those racist jokes, and I've also learned, I also asked my new training person, what did he think that it meant to be white? And when did he first find out that he was white? And he had said that he went to a mostly all-white school when he was younger, but then he switched schools, and he noticed that everyone was black. And so that's when he knew that he was white, based on the color differences of the new students that he was in. That one didn't really help me, but just asking questions about white people, and that's my update. I'll mute my line.
Fascinating. Excuse me. Very, very interesting observations he shared with us last week, the caller that just shared. Out of some of the things that he touched on, this is something I've recommended over the years as well, because other people have noted how nosy whites are, just in general, and particularly in the workspace. We talked about where I think you had your pad where you've been taking notes during the meeting, and you left it on the table or what have you, and she looked over and, just was going through already and looking to see what you had written down, and being thankful that your workplace journal was not in that same notepad. I think that's really, really important, wherever you keep your notes at about the job, to not, I would say, don't even keep it at the facility. Keep that at your residence or someplace where whites, regardless of how prying and nosy they are, they will not have access to it. I think that's really important. But if you're going to be reading something, particularly if it's something like the ISIS papers or Urugu or Amos Wilson, anything like that, I would get a book jacket. We've talked about that before. Just cover it so that people can't see what you are reading. I have seen where whites can be very, very nosy about just a nigger reading, period, is cause for alarm, much less they're reading something that looks like they're trying to be serious about racism. Like, oh, man, like that is major, major problem and cause for alarm. So I would, try to avoid that if you can completely, like read in your car or go read outside or what have you. If you got to read around the other race soldiers that are on your job, get a book cover, a book jacket. It's really, really easy, really, really cheap. Doesn't even take 5 minutes to make, so that the cover, the author, all that information is not readily available. Again, I encourage not talking about racism on the job, but again, sounds like we've had a lot of people where they are transitioning, right? They've been on the job and they did not have as much information about racism when they first started working there, and then they started getting more information about racism as they've been there. But I consistently encourage, do not talk about racism on the job. That's contrary to even what we heard in the opening clip from today's program, but be that as it may, that is Gus T's recommendation. Do not talk about racism on the job. You can talk about justice, correctness, whatever the case, but that's just my suggestion. Also wanted to make sure I encouraged taking mental health seriously, where I think it might have been suggested, like going to a therapist, and you get a white therapist, and then you can practice counter-racist techniques. Certainly one could do that, but I think if you have legitimate, issues that you want to address, to make sure that you address your health, and no black person under the system of white supremacy qualifies for black mental health. But if you have serious issues, I would say take that seriously and try to use those resources to get whatever help you can from it, as opposed to just going and trying to sharpen your tools for white supremacy. You can do that at another time. That is a significant, important activity as well, but something that should take a back seat, should not be a priority over black mental health. Right on. Other folks that we have not heard from, just trying to make sure we don't miss anybody. And then if people have other comments they want to make sure they get in, we'll have time for that too. Anybody that we have missed completely, have not heard from at all?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Couple of observations. I'll be brief. I accepted a new position. I was getting recruited pretty hard by another company in what I do in mortgage banking, and I accepted another position. But prior to that, I was working for this white female, older white female, who was my manager. She actually left the company that I'm with currently before I did. She called me maybe on like a Wednesday and was like, hey, I'm leaving the company, da-da-da-da, and I'm sharing an office space with her. And so she said, can you, let me know when you can come get your stuff? And I was like, no problem. I said, I'll be in there Monday, afternoon. And actually, I was in there Friday. I go by there on maybe a Saturday morning, and all of my items and belongings are packed up. And I said, didn't I just tell her that I was going to get this stuff myself? But all my personal belongings, pictures of my kids and everything was packed up. So that just goes back to being tacky and trashy and just typical of what they do. Then I had another white female that was calling to recruit me, and this was another interesting situation. This is not for the new company that I'm going to work for, but, when Gus said that people are very nosy, that is very, very true. So this older white woman's calling me, and she's like, hey, we would love to have you come work for our company. And I said, well, I'm in a good spot right now. And I said to her, and she asked me again, and I said to her, I'm in a really good spot. And then she started talking bad about the company that I was with. And she said, yeah, well, I don't know if you ever really want to, you could do a whole lot better. And then when I had to give her a hard, firm no, and when I told her, I'm not going to be looking to work for your company or to do anything of that nature, she changed her total tone, almost as if, I can't believe that this nigger just told me no. How dare he? And in my business particularly, white females are very, very tacky, but they are very deceptive, and they practice racism a lot. One other thing, the previous manager that I actually worked for, she has, and I'll just give you a little background information about her. She has a home listed for sale now. I live in the Virginia area, and it's listed for about $1.5 million, and it is a former plantation. And many of the people that I work with and for that in the particular area that I'm in, they actually own former plantations and things of that nature. One other observation I'll make before I get it, and then before I forget it, is that I teach classes. And in these classes that I teach, I work for a lady that runs a real estate school. And so in doing that, I have to, drop off documentation and things of that nature, let her know how the classes went. And one of the callers had mentioned a little bit earlier about people giving comments about being articulate and things of that nature. And I actually went back and read all my feedback forms for the last 2 years, and our being articulate is all over them. So that is a backhanded compliment. But the reason why I brought that up is that this is another white female in the real estate business. I had to go drop off some documents to her home. She's in a certain part of Virginia that is very Civil War historic. And driving upon their home, if anybody's ever been to Virginia and Southern Virginia, they have signs to where certain events happened. And there was one particular sign that was there, and it says something about colored troops. And I had to stop and pull over. And I was like, oh, colored troops, this looks interesting, might find something constructive. Well, it said this is one of the first places where colored troops and Confederate soldiers came together to do something. And it was very ironic because that whole entire area is called Robert E. Lee Estates. And just based upon my visual, there are no black people living there. It is all $1 million homes, mansions, and it's all white people. And very, very interesting. And then the last thing I just wanted to say is that I've been challenging a lot of things that Mr. Fuller says and reading my code book a little bit more frequently. And the one thing that I am proud of, even though, we're not successful, is that I looked at my loans that I've done this year, and I've helped a lot more non-white people than I have white people in getting into houses and cleaning up their credit and things of that nature. Oftentimes I used to wonder why I wasn't, quote unquote, not as successful as other people, but, I've had to start to ask myself, what am I really doing? Am I doing anything to make a dent to help non-white people and to end the system of racism? And I believe, I am, but I have to definitely do more, as I believe all of us do. And this show has really been beneficial in how I communicate in my classes and how I'm more refined in just making sure that I'm not being anti-black as well. And then I know I rambled a little bit, but I'll mute my line. But I really appreciate this show and how it's taught me to communicate a little better. Thanks, Gus.
Appreciate that. That is spectacular, being able to apply counter-racism on your job and help black people. That is A+, major commendations to the caller who just dialed in. And I know that has been a pattern within the system of white supremacy, black people who are trying to do things that are helpful to other black people, other non-white people, being targeted by racists. Not that you're not being targeted and abused anyway, but they quickly look to neutralize any black person. It looks like that's what they're trying to use their time and energy to see how they can help out some other black folks. Definitely something to be mindful of. Other folks that we have not heard from at all. Are there other people that we have not heard from at all?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, this is Ken Steele, and I'm currently traveling through the desert Southwest. So if my connection goes in and out, I might be inside of a mountain or something. One observation that I had based on a caller earlier, he mentioned that some of the information that he was getting from a coworker, a female coworker, I believe it was a white female coworker, and she was conveying some sort of sexual message toward his direction, I personally would advise against engaging. Suspected white.
The caller, are you still with us? Oh, he said his line might be going out. We are not hearing you, Ken Steele. We are not hearing you, sir. Okay. Maybe he'll ring us back once he's on a better spot. Other folks anybody that we have not heard from at all? Anybody that we missed?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Thanks for taking my call. I work at this hotel, and my manager, my general manager, is Caucasian. She's a little younger. I think she's like 29. So my district manager, she's Caucasian too. She's over her. I guess she runs the particular. She's a manager over particular hotels in the maybe Contra Costa area. I don't know. So I work at night, so I don't have a lot of contact. I have contact with whomever relieves me, which is whomever I relieve, which is basically maybe just a gay Asian male or a sometimes black girl. If she doesn't call off, I relieve her. So my manager, she clashes with all the black staff. And the Spanish housekeeper, she's been there maybe 13, 15 years. She's older, I've noticed. I had to stay around just to see who she was. She's an older, heavyset Spanish lady. Doesn't do very well as far as cleaning, but I guess she just doesn't because she still gets paid. So, and housekeeping sucks. So when I get there, everything is for me. So my manager will tell the staff, "Oh, don't do anything. Leave it for her." And then it's like a slew of things, whatever's happened during the day. And mind you, I leave at 7:30. So there's from 7:30 in the morning until 11 at night worth of trauma in my area. So I have to take me a minute to adjust to figure out where to begin because no one really does anything. It's like, oh, I had all these check-ins, and check-ins don't take that long. So she keeps up a lot of confusion in the daytime when she's there. This is the Caucasian manager. So there's a lady that relieves me that comes in. She started around the same time I did, but it was at another site, and then she transferred to this site because they needed her at my hotel. So little girl, about 20 years old, she doesn't bother me. She's black. And I talk to her and some other little young girls that she hires during the day, and they all get along. Everybody communicates because we have to work with each other. So the Caucasian lady, she really doesn't. She tries to figure me out because she doesn't have interaction, so she may ask around about me. But with the other staff, she just keeps confusion amongst them. So she really picks on this girl, the one that relieves me in the morning sometimes. And she just makes it real hard for her. She tells people, she goes over my head, and she's going to tell my boss stuff, and she doesn't realize that she'll get fired before I do. And this is what she's telling maybe the girl that I relieve. And it goes back and forth because, everybody's talking. So she just keeps up a lot of confusion and just terrorizes this girl. So she doesn't really like to come early. She has to come early to relieve me. She doesn't really like to come early, so she had it set up to where the younger black girl would come in at 7 so I can be relieved at some point. And she gets agitated with the girl because she knows some other girl, or she got along with this other new hire black girl. So she's like, oh, I hope you don't think you're going to be working with her because I know that you guys are talking, so you won't be on the same schedule together. And she's just like, well, I don't understand. Why are you bothering? I'm just letting you know you won't be working together. So she just terrorizes the girls. And there's the Asian male. He keeps up confusion on the under. So indiscretion. He'll act like it's not him, but he gives them a lot of confusion. And come to find out, my manager, she dates or has children with his cousin, the Asian male. So I think he feels free to do what he does and flip and pop around because the manager is his cousin-in-law. So, and I don't think everybody knows that, but we know this. So this morning, yesterday morning, the girl was giving me the skinny on why she hadn't been to work. So I was like, I haven't seen you in the morning. And she's like, because she took me off schedule. So she took her off schedule for 1 week because she got mad at her because the way they go back and forth. I guess, sometimes we don't understand how to talk to, our manager and the people in positions of authority. So we could go back and forth. So there's a housekeeper that she hired. And the black girl, they're going back and forth because the Spanish lady that's been there for 13 years, she'll let you know real quick what she's not going to do. No, I won't. No, I'm not cleaning this. I'm not doing this. And they say when they check the rooms, she's sitting in there watching Wendy Williams, so she's not even really working. And then she'll tell you, no, you go home now, and I'll stay till 5 so she can get all her hours and so forth. So it's a big mess. And then when I get there, it's even more of a mess because no one is literally doing anything but stripping the bed. Just strip the beds and just store everything for me to figure out what to do with it. So I was telling the young black girl, I was like, I said, stop arguing back and forth with the lady. Figure out, I was like, just listen. And then, if there's things that you need to write down, take notes and whatever, and then take that stuff home. Don't write it down and leave it here. Just whatever it is bothering you. I was like, where's your handbook? And she's like, I didn't get one. I was like, well, get a handbook, an employee handbook, so you'll know whatever the policies are. So you're not just going back and forth with her. I said, because she's going to end up firing you. I said, so don't just let her do that, because you need your job. That's why you're here. So she ended up cutting her hours, cut them down maybe to where she's not doing 40 hours. And just to make it complicated, so she'll take her off the schedule and then have herself off the schedule. This is the manager, and then she'll have to come in because somebody has to relieve it or go home. So this morning, she comes in. She's pregnant, I don't know how, but 6 months pregnant, so she'll be on leave soon. And, I say hi to her, whatever, so they're supposed to tell me about what I did. You didn't check in this guy, and then whoever's in 201, I said, well, pull it up, because I don't know 201. What is that? Pull it up. Oh, I can't. Well, what are you talking about? Oh, okay, here it is. So, well, you didn't check him in this site, and then you didn't check him in the other site, and then you charged him. I said, wait a minute. I said, no, that's not what happened. Yes, it is. And this, I was like, well, she wasn't even here. You tell me what I did. That's not what happened. I'm trying to explain to you what happened. You just asked me a question. Well, no. And then you didn't even check him in on this site, and you didn't do this. And then Kenny came in, and he was going to kick the guy out of the room because it showed that you didn't check him in. I said, well, I left this on the desk. Well, you didn't give it to me. I said, because you weren't here. Well, you didn't give it to the girl that was here. I said, I did. No, you didn't. And I was like, look, I know what I did. I said, his COC number's in there. I checked him in COC. Well, you're going to have to take your classes over. I said, I don't have a problem with doing a refresher, but I know what I'm doing. So I said, and I wrote notes. I printed it out, and I wrote 2 Post-its on it so you guys could fix it. Because I don't want to go through a whole lot of drama because I gave him an extra day, or I don't want to hear none of that. So then she goes, oh, okay, you did. I said, so what about COC? He's not checking COC. I don't know. I said, but you just told me I didn't check him in the other site, and the COC is a site for the construction workers or contractors. Their site, when they check into our hotel, we also have to check them into their site. So their site will know that they checked in because they basically pay for these stays. So And how did you charge him? I said, he paid with his own credit card. She's like, well, you're supposed to charge him this rent. I said, I didn't do any of that. I left that for you or whomever to do in the morning because I don't want to hear anything about how I didn't do this correctly. The only thing that I did do was check him into C.O.W.S. I said, he made this reservation online already. So she's, I just saw your notes, and I just saw this. I didn't know. That wrote Mia. I'm going to do this and this. I'm going to tell her she's going to have to take her classes over. I was like, I'll take my classes. No, not you. I'm just talking about her. I was like, but I know that what I'm saying is I always leave notes. I always leave instruction because I don't like going through this. I leave notes with the date and the time all the time so you'll know what I'm talking about and when it happened. Well, I know you did it now. I know now that it's not your fault today. And I just look at her because she likes to find fault in me because I don't really communicate with her, and she's trying to find something because I literally communicate with her manager. There's nothing for her and I to talk about. So I talk to her manager because she gets the job done. So I just noticed how she keeps up all this confusion amongst us as a staff. So there's no union, and everybody just does everything, and then she just blames us. So that's what I wanted to share. And thanks for taking my call, and I'll mute my line.
Job documentation, say that all the time, having documentation to support when allegations are made on the job, particularly if they're saying that, you messed this up or didn't do this or whatever the case may be, having documentation to support yourself. Anybody else that we missed completely who has not been able to share at all? I think we might even have Ken Steele back with us.
Howdy, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. I'm in a much better terrain for making calls, so I shouldn't be interrupted. So basically what I was saying was I don't recommend engaging in such familiar relationships with suspected white supremacist females at your job, simply because even as benign as the relationship may be at the time, at a later date, that relationship can be used against you. And everybody on the job is aware of the relationship. They're watching you at the same time. Sorry about that. Something that kind of supports what I observed in that call was a story about a person in the comedy scene with which I worked in. I have been in Chicago doing comedy there for about 3 years. And in that time, certain individuals I booked for various shows or different projects, and whenever I work with non-white comedians, sometimes I'll pull them aside and I'll, let them know about the system of white supremacy that we're in. If they're not aware of, some things I post or what have you, I just let them know that it's even affecting the conditions and the environment that we are operating in as comedians in Chicago. And one of these non-white victims of white supremacy that I kind of extended a hand to say, hey, why don't we work together and, you kind of cool out with some of these suspected white supremacists. He kind of rejected my offer, and one thing that I noticed was that he was engaged in a number of tragic arrangements with other comedians. I didn't know that it was that deep. I just thought that he was a person that had very familiar relationships with suspected white supremacist females operating within the Chicago comedy scene. Fast forward about a year and a half, and he is basically getting the Cosby treatment, which is ironic, or I don't know if it's ironic, but which is, something that is very interesting to me, considering the fact that he was one of the comedians in our kind of class that was one of the champions of the whole Cosby is the worst person ever, and he's a monster, et cetera, et cetera. He was forwarding a lot of those arguments, and then fast forward about a year and a half later, and he is getting the same treatment. And it's very, very, very harsh language that's being used against him, yet it's all short of criminal. I'll say that. But some of the things that have been said about him have, alleged criminal allegations, but these suspected white supremacist females, they are resolved to taking care of this within comedies. They're getting him removed from showcases. They're getting his dates canceled. They're openly discussing ruining his life in Facebook comments. So, I just want to advise the previous caller that you may think that you are practicing counter-racism. You may think that you're engaging in so-called benign activity, but all of the interactions that you have with the suspected white supremacist female can be twisted in such a way that it can suggest criminal behavior on your part. So be very careful. There are various non-white black males that can attest to this. One being Herman Cain, another, Clarence Thomas, I believe, an accuser is stepping forward and saying this about him in a situation where he was alone with her in a room. So, it doesn't take long for these stories to bubble up, and it doesn't take much for them to take hold. So don't or minimize your chances of exposing yourself to this harm being done to you in the workplace by minimizing your exposure to suspected white supremacist females. That's all I have to share. Thank you so much, and I will keep my line. Thank you.
Right on. Anybody else that we missed completely? Anybody who has not been able to share it all?
Have you heard?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Gus. Good evening to all the callers and listeners. Seneca from Sam from South Florida. I just want to pick back up on. It's been a while since I shared about this, but I want to pick back up on a job situation. I'm still presently employed as a detailer, and last time I shared, I was speaking about not my manager but my supervisor. He's a black man, but suspected racist definitely. And now I have more proof that he definitely is a racist, but he's a victim as well. So the last time I shared, I was speaking on, that he had a preference for white females. He had a preference for dealing with white males or white people in general when it comes to money, when it comes to possessions, things like that. He would rather much deal with white people. So since that time, since the time when I mentioned it to him, we had a conversation. And he exposed that to me. And, I asked him, why's your preference a white woman rather than a black woman? And, he went into the, I guess it's repeated tirade not tirade, but repeated remarks about black women are too strong, black women have attitude problems, black women are mad. So I kind of just let him go along with it, and I left it at that. But I made it clear that, I love my people. You know what I mean? I'm all for my people, him included. So, kind of got left at that. And since that time, he has demoted. And I think Gus, that you gave me advice about that, told me to beware of that. I think you and our retired firefighter gave me advice on that to look out for. He might do things as far as the job goes to
either to get me to quit or get me to step out of line, so that, therefore by the rules he could fire me. So needless to say, I've been, staying codified for the most part and, going along my job duties. He demoted me from detailer to service washer. And he also demoted my pay from my salary. He deducted $1. So instead of making like $10, $11, making $9 an hour. So he told me that it would be just, temporary things, that I would just be helping out with the service washes, and once things died down, that he would put me back in my proper position that I was hired for, and that he would boost my pay scale back up. That was about maybe a month and a half ago. He still hasn't moved me up. Matter of fact, 2 days ago I asked him about it because things have slowed down, and he's hired 4 other people after me, and I asked him about it. And I asked him about the individual. I said, are you going to move me back up to my detailer position? He said no. I asked him, would he move my pay grade back up? And he said no. Mind you, in this, from the time of our first conversation to what I'm speaking on now, it's constantly been, hey, Sin, you're not doing this right. You know what I'm saying? I think I might have to fire you. Hey, Sin, you know what I mean? I don't know if you're going to be here that long, you know what I mean? Like when I asked him about my pay scale, my pay rate, and when I asked him about moving me back into my proper position, he went into, I don't think you're going to be here that long. I don't know how long you're going to be here. And I asked him, why does he feel that way? And he proceeded to tell me that I'm not washing the cars the right way, or, just, I can't remember exactly what was his reason, but he gave some false reasons, just spewing stuff out. So, mind you, the manager, who's always on site, because he's not always on site, he bounces around to different stores, because the company that I work for, they detail at different dealerships. So, he goes around the South Florida area, Central Florida area, checking on stores. But in this last month and a half, he's been exclusively coming to the store, maybe like around 12, 1 o'clock. He's been coming to the dealership, and has just been out there looking around, looking at people, saying things to me, saying things to other people as well, but not in the same way as he speaks to me. It's all, whenever he speaks to me, it's always a threatening my position. So, one day he came in and he exposed it to me, the same thing. I might have to let you go, Sam. I don't know what's going on with you. And I asked him, did our manager say I wasn't working? Did anybody tell you, I haven't been working or pulling my weight? No, it's not that, you know what I mean? I said, so what is it? It's like, no, I'm not sure, I don't know if you fit in. So once he said fit in, I realized that, because this is a young man who mingles very well with white people, with all of the porters and salesmen, and about 96% of the mechanics are all white, mostly white males. The couple of non-white people that work in the mechanic shop is 4 of them, black males, but they're very high in color. Like they're very their color pigmentation is high. What we would call high yellow or bright red or something like that. And all the porters are white except for 2. One is non-white black male. The other one is non-white. He's classified as Hispanic or Latin. But they have a way about them that they freely, excuse my language, they freely throw out the word nigger. They freely throw out, just different things in that context of what I see as racism, but what they see is just regular talk. So I kind of forget my place, but I'm gonna get to the gist of what I was saying. Today we had a kind of bumping of heads. He
came to me again with the same thing. You know, I don't know how long you're gonna be here. It's the same tirade. So I asked him, or rather, I went and clocked out. It was 3 o'clock. I went and clocked out, sat down, and just watched. You know, just looking around and stuff. So he came to me. He was like, "Why you clocked out? You know what I mean? You could stay on the clock and got some money, get some more money." And I was like, I'm fine. You know, I don't need any more money. I've worked enough. You know what I mean? There are more important things than money. So he proceeded to pull out, you know, bankroll out of his pocket and, you know, flipping it, saying, "Well, what's more important than money?" Immediately, I thought about it, and I said, "Your skin, for one," and I said, "Your brain for another one." He got very quiet. He stared at me, kind of cocked his eyes at me and looked at me, and he said, "Oh, now here you go, Mr. Marcus Garvey, Mr. Malcolm X," and, you know, proceeded to laugh. The guys around you, however, they weren't laughing. And I said, that's fascinating. To borrow your lines, Gus. I said, that's fascinating and interesting. Why? Because you know these people. I never would have thought that you knew about these guys. So he proceeded to say some things about Marcus Garvey, just talking, trying to be light with the conversation, making jokes and stuff like that. But all of us are just looking at him like, you know, that's odd that you would go that route with it. Speaking about, you know, me coming down on me about losing my job, but once I go to it's not, money's not important, your skin is important. He shied away from that, and in my eyes, and went to kind of attack me about, you know, I'm being this person or I'm acting like this person. But he proceeded to leave, and you know, this show really helps me to understand, because I'm not a codified person at all. You know what I mean? Very, very overt with how I feel, speak it. Everybody knows it. But this show, being codified, you learn. When you're codified and your responses are codified, everything is on that level. You learn from them because they expose how they really feel. They expose the racism in them. And one final thing. Last week, he came to me with the same thing, and I got really upset, and I wanted to quit. I wanted to just go off, you know, to give him a piece of my mind. Sorry about the metaphor. But I didn't say anything. I got quiet, and I wear earphones at work, so I put one of my earphones in, and it was the podcast that you were speaking with Mother Wilson's Miss Frances Cress Wilson. You're speaking to her sister, and just at that moment, she sounded just like her sister. How to explain it? You know how Miss Wilson somebody would ask her a question or educate speak to her, and she would say something like yes, something like that, and her sister did the same thing, and I couldn't move. I was just in shock, like, wow, she's telling me to just be codified, stay calm, and just go about your job, do what you got to do, and just mark everything down. Going back to Mr. Fuller, Millie Fuller Jr., write it down, get your handbook, find out what they can do, what can be done, and what can't be done. And like I said, guys, this show has just helped me so much. So I just want to thank you, and thank all the listeners and the contributors. And I said thank you and good evening. And I'll mute my line.
Appreciate that. Always good to hear folks using whatever inspiration is delivered to codify our behavior as best we can. Before we get making sure I didn't miss anybody, I just want to say really quick, at least my suggestion would be, as best you can, to try to avoid like just unnecessary confrontations, right? Like if it's something serious, if they're doing something incorrect on the job, if they're stealing your wages, or if it's sexual harassment or something like that, something where there needs to be resolution to a problem, and if that means immediate confrontation, so be it. unless it's something like that, I would try to avoid those type of confrontations, like when you were about to leave and he comes up and is like, hey, what did you clock out for? You could have stayed on and made some more money. You like, hey, I'm good. I got enough money. I worked enough for today and other things to do. He's like, what do you mean? And he pulls out all his money so he can brag. Look how much money I got, nigga. Ha ha ha. You don't have a. And I just what's more important than money? Even little confrontations like that, I would just try to avoid, because just the tackiness and the vendetta, like whites, they like to take your response, particularly if you say anything slick or you get them right, you're quick. You can think on your feet and say something slick, catch them off guard. If you get the best of them in the verbal exchange, like they'll make a vendetta about that sort of thing and like be looking to mess with you for the next year on the job. Like that's just my little personal recommendation. Or if anything is going to be said at all, justice. What's better than money? Justice. To try to get any opportunity to say justice or talk about justice, I would take advantage of that, because that just saying that is like you are calling out racism, white supremacy, because whites, they know better than anybody else. What is blocking justice more than anything is white supremacy, racism. But that's just a suggestion. Anybody else that we missed completely? Anybody that we have not heard from at all? Lovely, lovely, lovely. All right. We have about 9 minutes left in the broadcast. If you had comments, if you had suggestions, you want to make sure you get in last 9 minutes before we wrap things up, feel free, even if you've spoken already.
Yes, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
One thing that is interesting about today's interaction on workplace racism is, I'll just say it, that one thing that you want to avoid is to have a symposium on counter racism on your job. What comes to my mind is United Independent. United Independent. Study all you can, preferably privately, on counter-racist strategy, methods, and tactics, and codify yourself. When you get to your job, through your behavior, act it out. It's just like in back to the professional soldier. A professional soldier is not having target practice in the middle of a battle. They do the target practice separate. When they end the battle, then what you practice, you enact, and it is best exemplified through your behavior. And I'm saying that from a standpoint so you can minimize your problems that you're having, because the moment that you come out, and I'm not necessarily saying that individual that it is something that is like intended to do, but it is something that can easily end up happening when you start having a symposium, defending your understanding of racist white supremacy, mentioning Mr. Fuller's ideas on counter-racism, or Dr. Welsing and the cows, it literally is nothing going to be constructive going to come out of that. For the most part, I would say 99.99% of the time, is nothing constructive going to come out of that for you. But if you do that studying and practicing when you're not at work, now when you come to work through your behavior, because you're practicing, a codified method that is prescribed for you, then that will reduce the conflict with other non-white people, and it would assist you into your interactions with white people on that job. Thank you.
Right on. Other folks have commentary they want to get in before we wrap things up? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say, as far as the therapy aspect, I think I mentioned before that I was going to seek some type of assistance for my mental health. I also did mention that during the time that I was in therapy, that it seemed like she was trying to leave my position to looking at the world in a different light, in a different way. And she would say things like, you sometimes just have to open up doors for people that are being impolite to show them that you're not going to be that type of person and stuff like that. So after a few sessions, I'm not going to say that it wasn't helpful, and I don't want to try to discourage anyone. But after a few sessions, I realized that the language that she used and how it seems that she was trying to change my views, I just discontinued my sessions. The only thing that I do miss, other than the conversations that me and her had, but the encouragement for me to continue to do certain things that help me out. She basically helped out a lot. She gave a lot of encouraging speeches to me, or like she'll show me like African painting and stuff like that. That would inspire me keep doing what I was doing. But at the same time, she would tell me, try to look at things differently, and everybody's not the same. So, that was my outtake on that.
I wanted to ask really quick, the caller, he shared a little bit about his experience working in a corporate setting, and then he said he was self-employed, and he gave some of his anecdotes with racist child and them, mocking him or disturbing him while he's working and what have you, and all that. Is that caller still with us, the male caller? Is that person still here?
Yes, I'm still with you.
Oh, okay. Right on. How did, I think you said before you were self-employed, quote unquote, when you were working in the corporate environment, the stress of the racism that you were experiencing, that it was having a significant impact on your relationship with your family. And I was just going to ask for some of the details, like how was that impacting your family life? Sure.
It was very difficult. I live in a city without any other immediate family here. It's my spouse and our two children. So there's not mother, father, uncle. So coming home every single day, I would have a 2-hour commute, an hour to the job and an hour home. Was extremely difficult trying to listen to constructive audio recordings, but when I got home, I would almost invariably sometimes take out my frustration on specifically my spouse, and which I would be very short with her, the same way that I was at work, trying to be short with my these coworkers, not speaking a lot to them, trying to be codified. It was very difficult to turn that off when I got home. Because of the amount of constant stress I was under. It was almost like being constantly, and physically I was threatened many times. And I wasn't like just janitor. I was management. I was threatened physically. So that would have an effect on me when I came home and spoke with my spouse.
Wow. That is detailed. Thank you for sharing. That's why I think this, being truthful about workplace racism is important, because it has such an impact on things that are most important to us. So that's why I think it's important to make sure that we're talking about this, how it impacts us, and trying to come up with some strategies as best we can to, how to neutralize as much of this as we go about solving the problem. Last comment, anybody have anything they can get in the last 2 minutes? Folks satisfied, or anything folks need to get in 2 minutes?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thanks, Gus. I just wanted to share that, along with my observation, that there was a incident where a female, I think a white female, was raped a couple of weeks ago, and as I shared before, where a suspected race soldier pretty much verbally assaulted me, and just like the difference in the response, there was a lot of police cars pretty much probing the area, making sure, I guess, if they could catch the person. But on the local news, like, they didn't really provide a description, and it's very amazing how they didn't provide a description. But from what one of the female coworkers told me, that they had an ID of the person, but they didn't release a description of the person. So, when it comes to descriptions, they would release a race classification. And I've heard, I don't know if, I think you've spoken on this before, like when you look at the news reports, if the person is a white person, they're not gonna release that information a lot of the time. And if it's like, for say a black male or a non-white male, they'll release that information. And it seemed like the police presence seemed to die down maybe like after a week or so after this incident happened. So, yeah, this happened around the area, and they were sending out a lot of the emails, at work to tell the females, I guess, that they could carry mace and things like that. But, when that happened to me, I was called a nigger and all that stuff. It wasn't, obviously it wasn't prioritized because, I'm a black person. So, yeah, I just thought I'd share that real quick. And thanks.
Wow. We talked about that before, the disproportionate response. It's just consistently minimizing racism, white supremacy against black people, that it's just not that big a deal, and we're not going to organize and get new security and escorts for everybody to get to their vehicle safely. But one thing happens to a white woman, and we have to mobilize all of the forces in the universe and change our whole protocol and everything, even go and recruit some of the black people to escort the white females to their vehicles safely. That will wrap us for workplace racism. I did kind of forget to check my email, Tad. I should have checked my email once or twice, one or two more other times during the course of the broadcast, just to make sure I didn't miss any of the emails from folks. But you can send them in if you have commentary, and if I missed it for this week, I'll make sure to include it next week. It's every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Every Thursday is workplace racism. So feel free to drop an email. Even if you email me like now, tomorrow, over this weekend, I'll just read it next week. So feel free. Anywho, we'll be here tomorrow. First book study session on Lathrop Stoddard, The Rising Tide of Color Against White World Supremacy. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, her name, which mentioned a lot this evening during her last Welsing Institute presentation. She said specifically, this book, non-white people should read. Read this book. She said it over and over again. Read this book. And I was specifically waiting. I wanted to read this book during election time. I thought it would be apropos. So we are here. We will be starting tomorrow. This book is free. Like, it's old enough. It was published almost 100 years ago. So the copyright has fallen away. So you can go online. You can get a PDF. You can get the ebook, whatever format that you need. Certainly this book is popular enough, even though it's older, that you can probably go to your library and get a hard copy if you actually want the real book in your hands. But if e-format will do you, just go online, archive.org. And other sites, they have it. You can download whatever format you need. You'll be ready to rock and roll, and we'll be here tomorrow. I would hope that people that say they, are concerned about Dr. Welsing, I would hope will have active participation, because Dr. Welsing wanted us to read and study this book carefully. I'm going to play the introduction will be her talking about this book at the Welsing Institute and really encouraging her students to study this work and apply the teachings to what we're seeing right now, 21st century. We'll be here on Saturday, compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And then we will also be here, not Sunday, but this coming Wednesday. That's November 2nd. We should have a black female here from Uganda. She's in Uganda right now. She was born in the States. She's working abroad. She's had some interesting international experiences with racism. She teaches in Uganda. So some of the students that she teaches, they have white parents. So she talks about racism that she's experienced in some of those interactions, as well as what it's like for her being someone who was born in the States and now living in Uganda. But she should be here next Wednesday. I suspect that program is going to be earlier because of the time difference. So just tune in. We'll have the exact time for all that next week. If you have other questions, guest suggestions, if you have problems finding a program in the archives, just drop us an email, untiljustice@gmail.com, untiljustice@gmail.com, and I will respond. If you have questions or just need help tracking something down the archives, we will hook you up and try to do it timely. With that, we will catch everyone in about 24 hours. I will state again, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. We want to make sure that our behavior at all times reflects the fact that war is being waged against us. We want to take that seriously. In my opinion, professional soldier, that's what we've been talking about a lot tonight. I don't think most people think of a professional soldier as being someone who is drunk, high, intoxicated. I don't think people generally think about a professional soldier being intoxicated as they go out on their mission. That's the way that we should think about ourselves as we deal with white supremacy racism. I don't think most people think of Rosa Parks or Minister Malcolm as being, drunk and high as they go off to fight against racism, white supremacy. I think we should try to emulate the best of those type of folks, Dr. Welsing included. Particularly, you do not want it to be your day if you are under the influence, including cigarettes, and have that be the moment that you bump into Darren Wilson, Daniel Holtzclaw, any other race soldier, badge or no. We want to be in position always to make phenomenal decisions. We never know when we might be making a decision that is going to save our life. That's it. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Context of White Supremacy signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.